Chapter 109. It was a pity that Zhang Xiaohua didn't know that as he practiced over and over again, his moves were slowly changing, gradually breaking away from the original records in the manual. Moreover, the figure in his mind was slowly blurring, as if he was forgetting the deeply engraved moves in the manual. Zhang Xiaohua, who finished practicing, felt very comfortable. He read a book under the oil lamp for a while, then went to bed early. Even in his dreams, there was a smile on his face. When he woke up in the morning, Zhang Xiaohua excitedly ran to the training grounds, full of joy. He waited there as if he was presenting a treasure, wanting to give He Tianshu and Nie Shao a surprise. He Tianshu and the others saw Zhang Xiaohua standing there early in the morning, but they didn't find it strange. This guy woke up so early every day, who knows where the sleepiness of a youth went. Everyone greeted him normally and then went back to practicing. Only He Tianshu smiled and asked, "Zhang Xiaohua, why did you run so far last night? Were you practicing some peerless martial arts? You're even hiding it and not letting us see." However, any peerless martial arts requires a good body to practice. You have to first take care of your body. You have to know that the body is the capital to roam the Jianghu. After He Tianshu finished teasing, he prepared to leave. Zhang Xiaohua mysteriously said, "Captain He, I really did practice some peerless martial arts yesterday. Do you want to see?" He Tianshu stopped in his tracks and raised his eyebrows, secretly thinking, "Not bad, you actually know how to counter lust. This child can be taught. However, if you want to spar with me, you're still too inexperienced." Thus, he went with the flow and crossed his arms in front of his chest, shouting loudly, "Little ones, come over. Zhang Xiaohua wants to show us some peerless martial arts." Nie Shao, and the others heard the captain's call and immediately used their movement skills to gather. Everyone looked at Zhang Xiaohua, their eyes full of smiles. The four of them knew Zhang Xiaohua's aptitude. Who would expect Zhang Xiaohua to practice some peerless martial arts? They just didn't see each other last night. What kind of fortuitous encounter could there be? Their actions today were just adding to the jokes in their lives, treating Zhang Xiaohua as their own cute little brother. Zhang Xiaohua saw that everyone's eyes were fixed on him. He was originally full of confidence, but now he was a little nervous. He muttered, "It's not some peerless martial arts. It's just that I practiced 2 sets of fist techniques yesterday and can perform them completely." Everyone was surprised. "Is that so? Really? It must be a peerless martial art. Our little blossom wouldn't be able to remember ordinary fist techniques." Zhang Xiaohua ignored their teasing. He calmed himself down, got into a horse stance, and prepared to start practicing the fist technique he had practiced the day before. However, when he raised his arm, he didn't know where to hit. He had actually forgotten. His mind went blank. What was going on? Zhang's his, how he's yesterday, he was very familiar with it. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua raise his arm to hit but stop, everyone's heart was like a mirror. They smiled and said, "Zhang Xiaohua, hurry up. We can't wait to see it." After Zhang Xiaohua's panic, he was slightly disappointed. He could only say, I forgot this set. Watch my next set." He thought to himself, "Sigh, it's not the first time I've been mocked by you guys. I'll get used to it. However, the gods passing by must bless me. Please don't let me forget the next set of fist techniques. Even if I can remember 1 or 2 moves, it's fine." Sure enough, perhaps Zhang Xiaohua's prayer was effective. A god flew over Zhang Xiaohua's head. In short, Zhang Xiaohua really performed 2 sets of fist techniques in front of He Tianshu and the others. However, these 2 sets of fist techniques were not connected to each other. He Tianshu looked at Zhang Xiaohua's 2 sets of fist techniques and thought for a long time. He asked, "Zhang Xiaohua, these 2 sets of fist techniques seem to be from the South Branch fist. However, the way you're fighting seems to be different from what I know." Zhang Xiaohua clasped his hands and stood there pitifully. He didn't know what to say or do. He really wanted to prove that he wasn't a good-for-nothing. He really wanted to show He Tianshu all the fist techniques he knew according to the fist technique manual in his mind. However, he was afraid that all the fist techniques would be yesterday's reenactment, and he would forget them the next day. In that case, he might as well not let them know that he had memorized a lot of fist techniques. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's appearance, He Tianshu's heart ached. He walked up to him and patted his head, saying, "Zhang Xiaohua, I know you're in the escort agency. Although you're recuperating, I'm sure you still want to practice your fist techniques. You must have learned these 2 sets of fist techniques from the escort agency and now you want to show them to us. I didn't see all of your moves today, but I believe you must have worked hard and learned them before. So, Zhang Xiaohua, you have to pull yourself together. If others can learn it after practicing it once, you can practice it 10 times, 100 times. You can do it." Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were filled with tears. When he heard He Tianshu's words, he couldn't help but feel shocked. He wiped his tears with his left sleeve and asked unconfidently, "Captain He, can I really do it?" He Tianshu nodded and said firmly, "Yes." However, he prayed in his heart, "Gods and Buddhas all over the sky, please forgive my lies. I'm doing this for Zhang Xiaohua's sake. Only you guys will know if it's true or not, right?" Zhang Xiaohua seemed to be really encouraged. The dispirited look on his face was swept away. He smiled and said, "All right, I'll definitely work hard and not let you down, Captain He." He Tianshu smiled and said, "I believe that. You definitely won't." However, in his heart, he thought, "I don't have any expectations at all. You won't let me down at all." The 3 people beside him also said, "Xiaohua, you must work hard. We all have high hopes for you." After breakfast, He Tianshu was going to lead the 4 people to work in the medicine field. However, Zhang Xiaohua asked He Tianshu for leave and wanted to rest for a day. He Tianshu naturally agreed without hesitation. Zhang Xiaohua's injuries had just healed and he was still resting. A few days ago, Zhang Xiaohua had insisted on working. He Tianshu looked at Zhang Xiaohua's somewhat injured right hand and felt very uncomfortable. Today, Zhang Xiaohua wanted to take a day off. He even said that he wanted Zhang Xiaohua to rest for a few more days. Zhang Xiaohua stayed in the room alone and thought carefully. The memories of the 2 sets of fist techniques from yesterday no longer existed in his mind. However, there were 2 more moves that were similar to the Arhat fist. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to understand that the fist techniques he learned from He Tianshu were no different from the fist techniques he learned from the manual. It wasn't that he suddenly became enlightened. He would still forget the moves. The moves that were left in his mind were only memories. He hadn't mastered them yet. When he started practicing, those complete fist techniques would be the same as when he learned from He Tianshu. He would forget the moves one by one. He really wasn't made for martial arts. However, Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood that everyone's path of martial arts was not the same. He had already thought about it when he was recuperating. It was just that he was blinded by his clear memory of the fist techniques and thought that he could learn the complete fist techniques. Now that he had returned to the starting point, it wasn't considered a failure. He should just obediently combine his own fist techniques and wait until he could link up a complete set of fist techniques. However, it was also good that he could clearly remember the fist techniques. It was equivalent to finding himself a master. He didn't need to look for others to learn fist techniques. It provided him with good materials to combine his fist techniques. There were more than 100 sets of fist techniques in his mind. He didn't know if he could complete a complete set of fist techniques after he finished practicing them. Sighing, Zhang Xiaohua didn't think about it anymore. He pushed open the door and went out. He still went to the place where he practiced last night. He gathered his thoughts and started yesterday again, according to his memory. In fact, the most important thing in doing anything was to find the goal and not the twists and turns in the process. From Zhang Xiaohua's martial arts practice process, it deeply illustrated this point. What Zhang Xiaohua didn't lack was that kind of hard work and that kind of tenacity unique to country people. What he didn't have was that kind of vision from a high vantage point. There was also no one to guide him and give him pointers. There was also no one to tailor his clothes and assign a one-on-one training plan for him. Even if He Tianshu liked this young man very much and could teach him martial arts fist techniques, there were times when he wouldn't specifically work hard for him. After all, Zhang Xiaohua wasn't his disciple and wasn't his blood relative. He Tianshu could teach Zhang Xiaohua so much and enlighten him on his fist techniques. It was already quite good. Otherwise, this country youth could only wave a small medicine spatula and dream about his martial arts. Nie Xiao'er was the same. Now that Zhang Xiaohua had found the path that suited him, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Naturally, he was unstoppable. He practiced a certain fist technique in his memory over and over again, experiencing the changes in his memory. But what surprised him was that no matter how he practiced, the memory in his mind remained the same. It didn't become blurry because of the familiarity of the moves. This was really strange. So he started practicing the second set of fist techniques. This time, he didn't practice too much. He only practiced it twice to familiarize himself with the fist technique before practicing the third set. This third set, he practiced it about 10 times and confirmed that he was very familiar with it. On this day of holiday, Zhang Xiaohua was practicing his fist techniques from morning to night. He practiced about 10 sets of fist techniques. Except for the morning practice, when he paid more attention to the fist techniques in his memory, Zhang Xiaohua didn't deliberately observe the other fist techniques. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua arrived at the foot of the tree with uneasiness and anticipation. He took up his stance. Sure enough, as Zhang Xiaohua expected, the fist techniques that he had familiarized himself with the day before had all disappeared from his memory. What was left behind were the fragmented moves that he had memorized deeply. It was difficult to forget them even if he wanted to. As for whether these moves were the same as the ones in the manual, it was easy to figure out the answer. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't disappointed because of the past. Instead, he was faintly excited. It seemed that he had found an unusual path. Whether this path was correct or not was still unknown. He needed to continue working hard and slowly explore. However, as the saying goes, everyone has a time when they cross the river by feeling the stones. Wasn't making a mistake just like paying tuition? Zhang Xiaohua was still young. If he made a mistake, even the heavens would forgive him. Since it was a set of fist techniques, no matter if he practiced it 3 times, 10 times, or even dozens of times, he would eventually forget it. The moves would have to be changed. Zhang Xiaohua naturally wasn't stupid enough to practice each fist technique dozens of times. He successfully practiced 3 sets of fist techniques in one morning. During the day, Zhang Xiaohua didn't officially start working in the herbal field. Therefore, he just followed behind Nie Xiao'er. In his free time, he was still recuperating in the escort agency. He slowly combined the remaining moves in his mind. However, perhaps it was because he didn't have many moves now. He could only link the previous 2 moves together. This made Zhang Xiaohua feel a little uneasy. He didn't know if his choice was correct. At night, Zhang Xiaohua was still practicing his fist techniques like he was in the morning. He stayed far away from He Tianshu and the others. However, Zhang Xiaohua still found that he could still practice the fist techniques that he practiced in the morning at night. He couldn't spend the night watching it. Could it be that something would happen at night? Or was it because he was so stupid that he couldn't take a good rest? Zhang Xiaohua had his doubts for the first time. Practicing fist techniques in the morning and at night, and building blocks in the day. This was Zhang Xiaohua's happy life. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was enjoying this comfortable life, a pair of eyes kept observing him. It was the one-armed elder Yu. However, his qinggong was so good that even He Tianshu might not be able to detect him, let alone Zhang Xiaohua. However, when Elder Yu saw Zhang Xiaohua diligently practicing the fist techniques that were popular in the pugilistic world, he was very surprised. He didn't know where this child learned so much rubbish. Didn't he know that it was better to eat a fresh peach than to eat a basket of rotten apricots? What was the use of practicing such rubbish? He really didn't understand. Elder Yu secretly shook his head. However, when he saw Zhang Xiaohua's messy, incomplete, and error-filled moves in the morning, he almost fell down from the wall he was standing on. What kind of talent was this? It was simply the best in the world. Elder Yu's head shook so hard that it almost hit Grandma's bridge. The only thing that made him feel gratified was that Zhang Xiaohua would practice his fist techniques under the tree whenever he had the time. This hard work was really worthy of praise. However, how much could hard work be worth? Zhang Xiaohua's passion finally ignited at noon one day. On his way back, his mind kept thinking about those unrelated moves of his. Suddenly, there were two moves that were perfectly combined. Zhang Xiaohua was so happy that he almost jumped up. What did this mean? It meant that he had chosen the right path, and it was the right path for him to practice martial arts. At night, Zhang Xiaohua was even more hardworking. He practiced a few sets of fist techniques in a row. He wasn't tired, but the fingers on his right hand were really sore. He couldn't continue practicing. If he didn't make a fist, then it could only be a palm technique. If he made a mistake, then the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to try. Day after day, the fist techniques in Zhang Xiaohua's mind were slowly forgotten. In another river of memories, there were more and more incomplete moves, and there were more and more moves that could be combined. Zhang Xiaohua was constantly accumulating and improving. As for He Tianshu and the others, when they saw Zhang Xiaohua hiding under a tree and practicing alone, they really wanted to ask about it. However, when they thought of his amazing memory, they retreated. Anyway, Zhang Xiaohua was only practicing fist techniques and wouldn't go crazy, so they just let him be. In fact, He Tianshu might not have other thoughts. He knew about the injury on Zhang Xiaohua's right hand. Although he wasn't a doctor, for such a serious injury, as long as one practiced martial arts, most people would have a certain idea. That was, his right hand was crippled. Why? Fists were used to hit others. If it was a fracture, it would be fine. After the injury was healed, when the fist was used as a weapon, other bones could be used as support to protect the fractured area. However, Zhang Xiaohua's fracture was the entire palm. Imagine if such a fist was used, where could it exert force? People often say that to kill 1,000 enemies, you lose 800 of your own men. If one's fist couldn't exert force, how could it exert force on the opponent? Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua was born with great strength. One arm had the strength of 250 kilograms. He was afraid that before the 250 kilograms of strength could make the opponent beg for mercy, the rebound force would cause Zhang Xiaohua's right hand to break again. Therefore, He Tianshu also intentionally or unintentionally wanted to stop Zhang Xiaohua from progressing further on the path of martial arts. What fist technique could Zhang Xiaohua practice by himself over there? It was just the same few moves over and over again. There wouldn't be any major mistakes. He was too lazy to look at it and let Zhang Xiaohua play by himself. There was always an end to everything. That night, Zhang Xiaohua finally practiced all the fist techniques in his memory. He secretly let out a sigh of relief. While practicing, the combination of moves also improved greatly. Not only were there many moves that were linked together, there were even 4, 5, and 10 moves that were perfectly linked together. However, practicing fist techniques was a simulated process while combining them was a real process of racking one's brain juice. This gave Zhang Xiaohua a headache. But fortunately, today was the last night. When he woke up tomorrow morning, it would be the time to see the real deal. He didn't know if these moves could really be combined into a complete set of fist techniques. That night, Zhang Xiaohua fell asleep with a heart full of worries. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua came to the tree early. He was already very familiar with the results of his practice. There were only 5 moves left that he still remembered clearly from yesterday's practice. Seeing that it was still early, Zhang Xiaohua wanted to use this time to combine these 5 moves into the fist technique that had already begun to take shape. But the result made Zhang Xiaohua surprised and happy. He was happy that these 5 moves were still perfectly complemented. He was surprised that this set of fist techniques still wasn't completely linked together. Zhang Xiaohua carefully thought for a moment in his mind. He realized that there were 101 moves in this set of fist techniques that he had combined. In the middle, there were 7 places that weren't linked together. He didn't know if it was because he was missing 7 moves or more. Zhang Xiaohua repeated these 101 moves twice. The gaps in the middle were only random links. He was sure that he had memorized it. As for whether he really remembered it, he could only think about it tomorrow. Now, what he needed to consider was where he could find fist arts manuals and learn more fist arts to supplement his combination of fist arts. Chapter 110. Zhang Xiaohua happily walked towards the dining room. He had gained a lot from this morning, and it was also the most fulfilling and important morning he had ever had since he started practicing his fist arts. Everything pointed to a beautiful future, and all that was missing was that final push. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Zhang Xiaohua. He jumped in fright and quickly stopped in his tracks. When he saw clearly, he patted his chest with lingering fear and said, "Elder Yu, even if your qinggong is powerful, you don't have to show off in front of me like this. As the saying goes, people can scare people to death. You appear and disappear so mysteriously. Fortunately, my heart is very strong." "Boss," Yu said with a straight face, "how's your messy fist arts coming along?" Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and shouted, "Elder Yu, this is my privacy, how can you peek at it? If you want to see it, you can tell me. If you don't tell me, how would I know that you want to see it? If you don't tell me, you're hurting my heart. I'm going to report you to the village head." Elder Yu curled his lips and said, "I wouldn't even bother to look at your erroneous moves even if they were placed in front of me. Peeping? I don't have that kind of free time." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "If you didn't see it, how would you know that I'm practicing my fist arts? How would you know that it's messy?" Elder Yu said, "Who can't see you hiding under the tree every day to practice your fist arts? Everyone only knows that you can't remember the entire set of fist arts, but I'm too embarrassed to say it. Do you think I don't have ears?" Zhang Xiaohua's face turned red. He wanted to tell Elder Yu about his progress, but whether he was doing the right thing, and whether he could still remember the fist arts tomorrow, was still unknown. Thus, he told himself in his heart, "I'll endure it, okay?" Then, he raised his head and asked Elder Yu, "Just treat it as me exercising my muscles and bones. You should at least encourage me. Why are you attacking my enthusiasm for no reason? Enough, what exactly do you want? If you don't say it, the food in the dining room will be finished by Nye and the rest." Elder Yu rolled his eyes at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Nothing much, I just wanted to tell you to wait for me under the tree where you practice tonight. I have something to tell you." Zhang Xiaohua drooped her head and said, "Elder Yu, you've defeated me. Didn't you say that I wouldn't go tonight? Do I need you to tell me?" Elder Yu's crafty scheme seemed to have succeeded as he said, "I deliberately told you because I wanted you to pay attention to it and be mentally prepared. Secondly, there's a dish of pork belly this morning. It's said that it's very delicious. Nye said that you always fight with him for it. He saw me just now and told me to tell you to go in a little later. He'll let you in after he's done eating. It's about time now. You should go." Zhang Xiaohua looked at Elder Yu's disrespectful behavior and said fiercely, "Elder Yu, you're ruthless." After speaking, she dashed into the dining room like a wisp of smoke, as if there was a dog chasing after her. At night, Zhang Xiaohua waited under the tree as Elder Yu said. Elder Yu didn't say when he would come over, so he calmly practiced his set of martial arts. When he was done, he heard someone cheering beside him. He looked up and saw that it was Elder Yu. Elder Yu said with praise, "Zhang Xiaohua, I see that you're quite smart. These messy moves were actually practiced by you. It's almost like a real set of martial arts. It seems like I have to look at you in a new light." Zhang Xiaohua said embarrassedly, "Elder Yu, I don't have a choice. You said this morning that I really can't remember the entire set of martial arts. I can only practice it myself. It's better than not having any martial arts to practice. Elder Yu nodded and said, your determination to pursue martial arts is really good. There are thousands of paths to success in this world. As long as you can find one and persevere, even if there's no result, you won't regret it. One day, when you look back, you'll be able to console yourself with pride that you've worked hard. Zhang Xiaohua thanked him, thank you for your guidance, Elder Yu. I'll work hard myself. Elder Yu asked again, Zhang Xiaohua, this set of martial arts of yours seems to be intermittent. You can't practice it in one go. It's like you can't finish a sentence and have to pause in the middle. Although the competition doesn't have to be particular about routines, an intermittent set of martial arts will cause you to not be able to practice to the best effect. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, Elder Yu, I heard that the highest realm of martial arts is to have no moves. My intermittent set of martial arts might be an evolution towards that realm. Elder Yu smiled and said, I don't know about the realm of no moves. That's a legendary realm. Perhaps only the top few in the martial arts world have it. Perhaps it's just a legend. Zhang Xiaohua took the opportunity to ask, Elder Yu, do you have a set of martial arts manuals? I want to take a look. Can you lend it to me? Elder Yu was stunned and said, set of martial arts manuals. I do. How come you know how to read them? That's impossible. Aren't you illiterate? Zhang Xiaohua said, Elder Yu, you're looking down on me too much. I was illiterate before, but that doesn't mean I won't be able to read now or in the future. Elder Yu thought for a moment and said, oh right, the last time I went to your room, you were reading a book. Could it be that you learned how to read while you were recuperating? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Elder Yu is wise. Elder Yu smiled and said, but martial arts manuals are different from reading. Being able to read doesn't mean you can understand them. Zhang Xiaohua said, Elder Yu, you don't have to worry about this. I've seen their collection of martial arts manuals at the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. I should be able to understand it. Elder Yu said, all right then. Come to my room when you have time. I'll find a set of martial arts manuals for you to read. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, then I'll have to thank Elder Yu. She then asked, oh right, Elder Yu, why are you looking for me tonight? Elder Yu looked at the full moon in the sky and said with a nostalgic tone, once you're in the martial arts world, you can't imagine the splendor of the martial arts world. Once you're in the martial arts world, time will make you grow old. Do you know, Zhang Xiaohua, there's a saying that goes, a person in the martial arts world has no choice. Only you have one foot in the martial arts world. But whether or not you're willing, the winds and waves of the martial arts world will blow you away, leaving you no choice but to go with the flow. Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand and said, Elder Yu, why are you telling me this? I haven't thought of entering the martial arts world yet. Elder Yu looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said seriously, Zhang Xiaohua, as long as you want to practice martial arts and learn fist techniques, then you will inevitably be contaminated by the martial arts world. You can't avoid this. Although you're still young, you seem to have already chosen this path. Unless, you give up on practicing martial arts now and wholeheartedly focus on farming in this villa. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, I only practice martial arts to protect my family. Although I'm envious of the hot-bloodedness of the martial arts world, with my skills, it's still too early for me. Oh right, don't tell me you're going to tell me about the martial arts world today. Elder Yu said, don't be anxious, Zhang Xiaohua. I'm telling you about the dangers of the martial arts world because I want you to know that if you insist on practicing martial arts, then you must have the awareness to enter the martial arts world. And to survive in the martial arts world, the most important thing is to have the means to protect your life. Zhang Xiaohua still didn't understand. Elder Yu sighed and said, actually, I'm telling you so much because I want you to know the dangers of the martial arts world and dispel your thoughts of practicing martial arts. You don't seem to understand the severity of the injury on your right hand. Zhang Xiaohua asked anxiously, how serious is it, Elder Yu? Didn't the doctor say that I can still practice fist techniques? Elder Yu said, the doctor didn't lie to you. You can practice fist techniques, but your right hand is already crippled. It's not very possible for you to really compete with others. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and said, "What's going on? Elder Yu, you must explain it to me clearly." Thus, Elder Yu told her about Zhang Xiaohua's injury from beginning to end. Zhang Xiaohua's face was ashen. She really didn't think too much about it and thought that it would be fine as long as her bones healed. But now that she heard Elder Yu's words, she realized that things were far from as simple as she thought. Since her fist couldn't effectively attack others, then it was naturally crippled. Then what was the use of practicing fist techniques? Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua's expression was strange, Elder Yu didn't continue speaking and waited quietly for a while. When Zhang Xiaohua's emotions calmed down a little, he asked again, "Then, do you still want to practice martial arts now?" Zhang Xiaohua still nodded and said with a determined gaze, "Practice martial arts, why not? Didn't you say just now that I've found my own path, I have to walk it to the end? Even if there's no result, I won't regret it. My right hand is crippled, but I still have my left hand. Even if I use my left hand, I can still practice fist techniques well and protect my family." Elder Yu's expression was as expected and said, "Child, you're really a person who walks the path to the end. I came here today for 2 reasons, and I've already said one. Since you don't want to give up on practicing martial arts, then I have a second suggestion. Are you willing to listen?" Zhang Xiaohua sucked in her lips and said, "Of course I'm willing, Elder Yu. I know you're doing this for my own good." Elder Yu said with gratification, "It's good that you know. I don't know how you moved me, but I actually find you pleasing to the eye." Then, he continued, "Actually, in the martial arts world, the fist isn't the only thing that can save a life. Most people use weapons, such as sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and the like. Now that your fist is crippled, you can still practice with weapons." Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up and said, "That's right, Elder Yu. You're really amazing, you even know this." Elder Yu smiled bitterly and said, "This is just common knowledge in the martial arts world. Only an inexperienced child like you wouldn't know. Don't admire me so much, it'll make me feel ashamed." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I don't have a choice, I can only admire you. But, what weapon do you think I should practice?" Elder Yu said, "Actually, you can practice any weapon, as long as you can practice it well. Although there's a saying in the martial arts world, the spear is the king of 100 weapons, 100 staff skills, 1,000 sabers skills, 10,000 sword skills, and so on, a person's aptitude and opportunities are different. Not all people practice the same weapon. In your right-hand situation, it's best to practice a staff technique." Zhang Xiaohua frowned, "Staff technique? I've never seen anyone practice it before. Elder Yu, where can I find someone to teach me?" Elder Yu was happy and said, "With your aptitude and right hand, how can anyone teach you staff techniques? Don't even think about it." Zhang Xiaohua said worriedly, "If no one teaches me such a simple staff technique, what's the point of saying so much?" Elder Yu waited for a moment and said, "I don't know staff techniques." Zhang Xiaohua pouted and said, "If you don't know staff techniques, how are you going to teach me?" Elder Yu said again, "Our sect's martial arts will not be taught to outsiders before we accept a disciple." Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and said, "Master, please accept this little disciple's bow." She was about to kowtow when she finished speaking. However, she was stopped by Elder Yu's arm and said, "Forget it. With your aptitude, I'll be angered to death if I teach you. Just save it and let me live for a few more years." When Zhang Xiaohua steadied himself, he continued, "Although I can't take you as my disciple, it's a coincidence that I know a sword technique. I learned it by chance, so I can consider teaching it to you." Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and said, "Really, Elder Yu, you can teach me this sword technique?" Elder Yu smiled and said, "This sword technique is not a secret of my sect, so I naturally have the right to decide. I can teach it to you." Zhang Xiaohua said, "Then, thank you very much, Elder Yu." Why is there only one sword technique? Can't you teach me a few more? Don't be too stingy with me." Elder Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Zhang Xiaohua, you lack the foundation of Jianghu. When will I enlighten you? This sword technique is different from a fist technique. A fist technique is a complete set that contains both offense and defense. It's a complete set that can strengthen the body. Some fist techniques can even be used to cultivate internal strength. On the other hand, most sword techniques are a complete set that can be used from start to finish like a fist technique. However, there is also a sword technique that has only one move. Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand and said, "One move? How do you do it? You can't possibly do it like the fist technique I practice, right?" Elder Yu explained, in a competition between weapons, it's important to use one move to defeat the enemy. If you use a sword for half a day to determine the winner, then you'll be at a disadvantage. In a competition between experts, it's fine if you don't move, but once you move, the winner will be determined. Zhang Xiaohua stuck out her tongue and said, "Then Elder Yu's sword technique with only one move, is it a high-quality sword technique?" Elder Yu smiled and said, "Whether it's high quality or not depends on the person using the sword. If I use it, then it's a killing sword technique, but if you use it, then it might be for others to watch." However, Zhang Xiaohua still asked, "Why don't I understand? It's just a sword technique, how can you practice it?" Elder Yu said, "Whether this sword technique is a complete set or if there are other moves, I don't know. At that time, I only practiced a single move with 19 variations." Zhang Xiaohua was flabbergasted and said, "One move? 19 variations?" Elder Yu said with a smile, "That's right. Just this one move has 19 variations and they're all offensive moves. I believe there are other defensive variations or moves, but I don't know of them." Zhang Xiaohua asked again, "Then, Elder Yu, I want to ask, is there anything different between sword techniques and fist techniques?" "It's just that there are usually different variations in one sword technique." Elder Yu nodded and said, "You're right. Normal sword techniques are like this." Only then did Zhang Xiaohua understand why she could understand fist techniques but not sword techniques. It turned out that there were so many things to pay attention to in the two techniques. Thinking that she could learn a more profound sword technique, Zhang Xiaohua became even more enthusiastic and said, "Elder Yu, then please teach me now." Elder Yu said, "I'm only telling you tonight. I can only teach you the specifics in the morning. You won't be able to see the subtle differences in the sword technique at night, so it's not easy to learn." Zhang Xiaohua said again, "Then, Elder Yu, can you let me see the power of this sword technique?" Elder Yu pondered for a moment and suddenly pulled out his sword from the scabbard with one hand and pierced towards Zhang Xiaohua's throat from a strange angle. Although Zhang Xiaohua could feel the sword's momentum and direction, her body's reaction wasn't fast enough. Before Zhang Xiaohua could move, the tip of the sword was already at her chin. Zhang Xiaohua didn't pay attention to it and threw a punch at the sword. The sword retracted and changed its angle at lightning speed, stopping in front of her eyes. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the sword tip that stopped in front of her and felt a sense of helplessness. This kind of mysterious sword technique was simply too powerful. Elder Yu saw that Zhang Xiaohua wasn't moving, so he put the sword back into the scabbard. He said, "How is it? Zhang Xiaohua, is this move good?" Zhang Xiaohua said in annoyance, "Of course it's good against a rookie like me, but I wonder how others will fare. For example, Captain He." Elder Yu said proudly, "In front of this sword technique, you and He Tianshu are the same." Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were filled with stars. She wanted to learn this powerful move as soon as possible, but Elder Yu wasn't in a hurry and said, "Since I promised you and came looking for you, I will naturally teach you this sword technique. However, you have to promise me two things." Zhang Xiaohua said, "Please tell me. Even if it's to wash your socks for 10 years, I'm willing to do it." Elder Yu said, "First, you can't tell others that I taught you this sword technique. Even if others know that you know this sword technique, you can't say that I taught it to you." Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand, but she didn't ask. She only said, "That means I can't tell Captain He and my second brother either." Elder Yu nodded. Zhang Xiaohua said again, "Then, can I teach this sword technique to my second brother?" Elder Yu thought for a moment and said, "This sword technique is too sharp. If it's spread, it will cause a storm in the martial arts world. It's better not to spread it." Zhang Xiaohua agreed. Elder Yu continued, "The second thing is that once this sword technique is used, there will be no return. Blood will definitely be spilled and it will harm heaven and earth. I hope that you won't use it casually, and you won't use it unless your life is in danger. Do you understand?" Zhang Xiaohua fell into deep thought. Seeing that she understood, Elder Yu said, "I'm sure you understand now that this is a very powerful sword technique. I'm teaching it to you today so that you can save your life. I don't want you to bring it to greater heights. I hope you won't let me down and stain your sword with the blood of innocence." Zhang Xiaohua bowed sincerely and said, "Elder Yu, I understand your intentions. I will definitely remember what you said tonight and won't harm the innocent." Elder Yu smiled and said, "Actually, with your temperament, I'm not worried. You've been practicing martial arts from morning to night. Although your aptitude isn't good, you're not afraid of hardships and work tirelessly. I'm sure you'll have a bright future in the future. Being able to learn this sword technique can be considered a bright pearl that doesn't need to be covered in dust. However, when you enter the martial arts world in the future, you have to be more careful and not be too hot-blooded. What you see may not be true." Zhang Xiaohua was confused. "What you see may not be true. Please add it to your collection, thank you." Chapter 111. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua went to the tree as usual. Elder Yu hadn't moved yet, so Zhang Xiaohua stood still and started practicing his incomplete fist technique. Since he knew that Elder Yu would teach him a sword technique, Zhang Xiaohua didn't care as much as before about whether he would forget this fist technique. He was like a naughty child who was very concerned about his favorite toy and was suddenly given an even more interesting toy by an adult. That child's longing for his old toy would fade away, and he wouldn't cry as much as before even if he lost it. Although he had such thoughts, when Zhang Xiaohua finished practicing the fist technique that he had learned last night, he still felt a burst of excitement. After all, according to his experience, this incomplete fist technique had been tested by his powerful memory for an entire night. Since he was able to practice it now, he was sure that he wouldn't forget it in the future. Zhang Xiaohua almost wanted to howl at the sky. "The heavens have pity on me, Zhang Xiaohua, Zhang Xiaohua, can finally practice the incomplete fist technique." Moreover, there was a sucker coming to teach him a sword technique that he had never dreamed of. This kind of good luck was truly indescribable. Could it be that it was the culmination of his good luck over the past 10 years? He couldn't help but raise his head to look at the rising sun and take a deep breath of the cool air. This was truly the blissful life of the countryside youth, Zhang Xiaohua. Just as he was immersed in his thoughts, a figure flashed past. Zhang Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. Although he couldn't see clearly, he could still feel that person's aura. It was undoubtedly Elder Yu. As expected, before that figure arrived, Elder Yu's voice could be heard, "Zhang Xiaohua, you're already here?" Zhang Xiaohua replied respectfully, "Yes, Elder Yu. I've already practiced a fist technique." Elder Yu said, "Hee, you're up pretty early. Looks like you're someone who can endure hardships. My judgment was right." Zhang Xiaohua muttered to herself, "It's not that I don't want to sleep. The heavens have mercy on me. As soon as the sun rises, I have to wake up. I can't sleep anymore. Do you think I don't want to sleep more?" Elder Yu naturally couldn't hear Zhang Xiaohua's silent criticism, so he continued, "Actually, even though you're early, you should have said, 'Elder Yu, I just arrived too,' out of courtesy. That would have made me feel that you're a sensible child who's considerate of others. You should remember that when you're dating girls in the future." Zhang Xiaohua touched her chin. She was very puzzled, but she still firmly remembered it in her heart. Elder Yu was very satisfied with Zhang Xiaohua's attitude and said, "All right, let's not talk about it anymore. Come, let's go over there. My sword technique is extraordinary, we can't let He Tianshu and the others steal it." After saying that, he brought Zhang Xiaohua around a few corners and arrived behind a tree. Even if He Tianshu wanted to see them, he would have to look around a few corners. When the two of them stood still, Elder Yu said seriously, Zhang Xiaohua, I've already told you the pros and cons of this sword technique last night. Do you remember it clearly? Zhang Xiaohua also put away her other thoughts and said, Yes, Elder Yu. I've already remembered it. I'll definitely do as you say in the future. Elder Yu continued, I obtained this sword technique from a damaged sheepskin. I don't know the name of the sword technique, so you can call it the nameless sword technique. Actually, a simple sword technique is the same as a simple fist technique. It won't be able to withstand a single blow from a vast amount of internal energy. However, a sword technique uses the sword as a medium. If it's used properly, an ingenious sword technique might be able to break through a person's internal energy defense. This sword technique is also different from other sword techniques. It has its own set of incantations that can drive your internal energy to support the sword and body, achieving the best timing to attack. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua interrupted, But, Elder Yu, I don't know how to use internal energy. Elder Yu frowned and said, Don't interrupt me when I'm talking. It's easy to disturb my thoughts. If I forget a sentence or two, don't blame me if your cultivation goes berserk in the future. Zhang Xiaohua covered her mouth and nodded vigorously, indicating that she understood. Then, Elder Yu shook his head and recited a famous sword technique. If you want to cultivate a divine technique, you have to castrate yourself with a blade. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she felt that it was really profound. Why couldn't she understand it? But if she couldn't even understand the first sentence, how was she going to cultivate the sword techniques in the future? She couldn't help but feel anxious. She covered her mouth with her left hand and waved her right hand vigorously. When Elder Yu saw this, he frowned and said, Zhang Xiaohua, what's the matter? Zhang Xiaohua let go of her left hand and took a deep breath before asking, Elder Yu, what do you mean by, castrate yourself with a blade? Elder Yu was stunned and said, Why do you have to castrate yourself with a blade? Zhang Xiaohua was also stunned and said, Wasn't the first sentence of your sword technique, if you want to cultivate a divine technique, you have to castrate yourself with a blade? When Elder Yu heard this, his old face turned red and he patted his forehead and said embarrassedly, My mistake, my mistake. I've read too many wuxia novels. Reality and fantasy overlap. The sentence I said earlier wasn't right. I'll repeat it again. Thus, Elder Yu seriously recited that awkward sword technique again. It wasn't much, only a few dozen words, but Zhang Xiaohua couldn't understand it no matter how hard she tried. Elder Yu didn't explain and only let Zhang Xiaohua firmly remember it. With the previous example, how could Zhang Xiaohua dare to believe it? She let Elder Yu recite it 3 times. After she remembered it, she recited it a few more times in front of Elder Yu. She only relaxed when she saw Elder Yu nodding his head continuously. Then, Elder Yu drew out his long sword and formed a sword stance as he explained the first change to Zhang Xiaohua. Everything in the world seemed easy when others did it, but it was difficult when you did it yourself. Elder Yu explained the changes in this sword technique twice and Zhang Xiaohua already understood it. However, when she picked up the branch and tried to execute it herself, she couldn't do what Elder Yu wanted no matter how hard she tried. After repeating this a few times, Elder Yu was annoyed. He looked at the sky and said, Zhang Xiaohua, let's stop here for today. Go back and think about it carefully. Try to figure out the changes in the sword technique. That sword technique has to be constantly recited, so you must remember it well. Zhang Xiaohua asked awkwardly, I know the changes in the sword technique, so I will naturally practice it diligently. However, I don't know anything about this sword technique. Elder Yu didn't think much of it and said, the sword technique is the general principle of the changes in the sword technique. I will explain it to you in detail when you have a slight understanding of the sword technique. This general principle is related to the use of internal energy. Right now, you don't have any internal energy, so it won't be good if I explain too much. You just have to memorize it well. Zhang Xiaohua finally understood and nodded in agreement. Then, Zhang Xiaohua asked again, Elder Yu, you promised me yesterday that you would let me borrow your fist technique manual. I wonder when is the right time. Elder Yu thought for a moment and said, let's talk about it after you have comprehended the first change. Looking at a fist technique manual will distract you. This is your first time coming into contact with a sword technique, so let's talk about it after you have made some progress. Zhang Xiaohua thought about it and felt that it made sense. Moreover, perfecting this fist technique wasn't something that could be done overnight. She had already waited for several months, so there was no rush. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua kept revising the sword technique in her mind for the entire day. Whenever she had time, she would think about the changes in the sword technique. When she was free in the room, she would take out a tree branch and continuously practice it. However, she still couldn't perfectly execute it. Actually, this wasn't only the first time Zhang Xiaohua came into contact with a sword technique, so she couldn't understand it very well. Moreover, his right hand was injured, so his fingers couldn't be as nimble as usual. He couldn't control the strength and angle well, so it was very difficult for him to execute the first step of this sword technique. After dinner, Elder Yu slowly demonstrated the variations of the sword technique under the cover of dusk. He also explained the things that Zhang Xiaohua needed to pay attention to and the techniques to execute the sword technique. Zhang Xiaohua listened attentively and combined it with his own thoughts during the day. When he executed the sword technique, it looked quite good. However, Elder Yu still shook his head. Zhang Xiaohua practiced for a while more, but there was no progress. She couldn't help but feel discouraged. She looked at her right hand and thought to herself, is my right hand really crippled? From Elder Yu's words, this move doesn't seem too difficult. Why can't I practice it well? Then, her eyes lit up and she asked, Elder Yu, look, my right hand isn't very nimble. Can I use my left hand to execute it? Elder Yu didn't nod as she expected. Instead, he said quietly, Zhang Xiaohua, are you trying to avoid some difficulties when you encounter them? If that's the case, then it's fine if you don't learn the sword technique. Why do you have to suffer? Zhang Xiaohua argued, no, Elder Yu, I just feel that my right hand is too clumsy. I can't control the strength and position of the branch. That's why I thought of using my left hand. Elder Yu smiled, actually, I've already thought of the problem that you're thinking about. It's just that most of the sword techniques in the pugilistic world are right-handed. There are very few left-handed sword techniques. These sword techniques are also recorded with the right hand as an example. The sword technique that I obtained is also recorded with the right hand. Moreover, the meridians of the left and right hand are different. The internal energy circulation in the sword technique is also recorded with the right hand. Naturally, I can't use the sword technique to teach you with the right hand. Moreover, where did I get my left arm from? Without a left arm, I can't change the sword technique from a right-hand sword to a left-hand sword. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was silent, Elder Yu continued, therefore, I can't teach you how to use the sword with the left hand. Actually, there's another reason why I'm teaching you this sword technique. Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled, so he asked, there's another reason. Elder Yu nodded his head solemnly and said, the most important part of this sword art is the palm and wrist. Your right hand is already injured, and if you don't train it properly, it might not recover. I'm imparting this sword art to you because I want you to train your right hand diligently. When you train for a long time, perhaps the heavens will open their eyes and let your right hand recover. If you retreat in the face of difficulties now, I reckon that not only will you not have any achievements in swordsmanship, but you will also not succeed in fist techniques. Zhang Xiaohua finally understood and bowed deeply, Elder Yu, thank you for your kind intentions. This little one understands. I'll practice properly now. Elder Yu smiled, all right, there's no need to be so pretentious. It's only when you're able to practice well that you're truly capable. Zhang Xiaohua nodded his head and picked up the branch to practice again and again. He gradually got better and better, so much so that he didn't even notice Elder Yu's departure. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was practicing, the branch suddenly fell down. Zhang Xiaohua was startled awake and felt that his right hand was in extreme pain. Not only was his wrist sore, but his 5 fingers were also in extreme pain. Zhang Xiaohua's heart couldn't help but tremble. Could it be that the wound had ruptured again? He could only stand there and didn't dare to practice anymore. Only after a long time did the pain slowly lessen. Zhang Xiaohua knew that the wound didn't rupture again. However, there was a limit to how much he could train his fingers. He had overdone it today, so he had to be more careful in the future. If he overdid it every day, not only would it not achieve good results, it might even cause his fingers to become deformed and his bones to rupture again. Since he couldn't practice his sword technique, Zhang Xiaohua thought of his fist technique. Thus, he stood still and executed his 100 fist techniques one by one. Even though it wasn't continuous, it was still very satisfying. After he finished practicing his fist technique, Zhang Xiaohua saw that it was getting late. He used his left hand to carry the branch and slowly walked back. Zhang Xiaohua swung the branch as he walked. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. Even though Elder Yu stopped him from trying to use his left hand, Elder Yu didn't say that he couldn't use his left hand. Even though the meridians in his left and right hands were different, he didn't have any internal energy right now and couldn't use any sword techniques. That meant that the sword techniques in his right hand could also be executed with his left hand. Elder Yu couldn't teach him how to use his left hand because he didn't have a left hand and couldn't understand the changes in his right hand. So why couldn't he use his left hand to execute the changes in his right hand? The more Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, the more excited he became and the more he felt that it was possible. He looked around and felt that there was no one around. Thus, he placed the lantern to the side and walked to the side with the branch. He carefully thought about Elder Yu's teachings and slowly executed them with his left hand. After using his left hand for the past few months, even though Zhang Xiaohua wasn't born left-handed, his left hand was now more agile than a left-handed person. Elder Yu's teachings in the morning were actually executed as smoothly as flowing water when Zhang Xiaohua slowly executed them with his left hand. The first time was still a little clumsy and uncoordinated, but after he finished, the next few times became more and more natural. This unexpected discovery made Zhang Xiaohua extremely happy. It was as if he had found another way to practice his sword technique. After he practiced a few more times and confirmed that he could really use his left hand, he picked up the lantern and went back to his room to rest. When Zhang Xiaohua woke up in the morning, he wanted to tell Elder Yu the good news as soon as possible. However, when he started practicing again, he encountered the same problem as when he was practicing his fist technique. That was, the changes in the sword technique he executed with his left hand were different from what Elder Yu taught him. There were many deviations. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaohua didn't forget anything this time. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless as he looked at the sword technique that he had used that had changed beyond recognition. The thought of reporting the good news to Elder Yu had been forcefully extinguished. Forget it. Rather than being mocked by others, I might as well enjoy it myself. Thinking that Elder Yu was about to arrive, Zhang Xiaohua stopped practicing with his left hand and stretched his muscles. Just as he was about to execute the 100 moves of his fist technique, Elder Yu arrived. Elder Yu asked about last night's practice. Zhang Xiaohua honestly told him about the condition of his right hand. He opened his mouth and wanted to say that he was using his left hand, but in the end, he didn't. When Elder Yu heard Zhang Xiaohua's words, his expression became serious. He grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's right hand and carefully touched it. You practiced a little too much yesterday. Just as you guessed, your right hand is a little stiff. Rest for today and think about the changes during the day. Practice again at night. After he finished speaking, he once again reminded Zhang Xiaohua not to practice his sword technique during the day. Only then did he float away and go straight to the dining room. Seeing that she didn't have to practice her sword technique in the morning, Zhang Xiaohua could only continue practicing her fist technique. She practiced the 100 moves over and over again. The more she practiced, the smoother it became. This made her even more determined to complete the fist technique as soon as possible. She was very much looking forward to the feeling of practicing it from beginning to end once she completed the fist technique. After she finished practicing her fist technique, she looked at the sky. There was still some time before breakfast. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but put her thoughts on the sword in her left hand. Without hesitation, Zhang Xiaohua's figure disappeared into the forest. Holding a tree branch in her left hand, she executed the changes of the sword technique that she had memorized. Over and over again, her execution was very smooth. It seemed to be at the same level as Elder Yu's that day. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was immersed in the world of the sword in her left hand, suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua felt that there seemed to be a warm current flowing along her left arm following the changes of the sword technique. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but stop. But when she tried to sense it carefully, there was no trace of it. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua slowly executed it again. Still, she didn't feel anything. It seemed to be her imagination. Zhang Xiaohua quickly executed it again. Still, there was nothing. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head. She really thought that it was her imagination. However, when Zhang Xiaohua continuously executed the sword technique again, she inadvertently felt the same feeling again. Only then did she know that she wasn't wrong. Thinking about it carefully, the appearance of this warm current seemed to be related to the speed at which she executed the sword technique. Just as she was about to try different speeds to find the warm current, a shout interrupted her. "Zhang Xiaohua, where are you?" Zhang Xiaohua tilted her head to listen. It was Nie Xiaoer's voice. She couldn't help but be confused. Why did this guy suddenly appear? When she came out of the forest, she realized that the sun was already high up in the sky. Everyone else was preparing to go work in the herb field. He hadn't even eaten breakfast yet. Seeing He Tianshu's concerned gaze, Zhang Xiaohua said embarrassedly, "Captain He, I was practicing fist techniques in the forest and forgot the time." He Tianshu said, "Zhang Xiaohua, do you know what it means to be hasty? Some things can't be done overnight. You have to learn to be down to earth and walk step by step. I support hard work, but I don't agree to practicing martial arts without using your body. You've been hiding in the forest by yourself these past few days. Are you still practicing your fist techniques?" Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "You can say that." He Tianshu smiled and said, "I know that you're afraid that we'll laugh at you for practicing those incomplete fist techniques. Practice it if you want, but you have to think about your body. Your right hand hasn't completely recovered yet, so you have to pay attention to rest. If your right hand is worn out again, even if it's incomplete fist techniques, you can't practice them anymore." Zhang Xiaohua respectfully said, "Captain He, I understand. I'll be careful in the future." He Tianshu patted her shoulder and said, "Okay, it's good that you know. If you're not afraid of being embarrassed in the future, you should practice with us. We promise we won't laugh at you." Zhang Xiaohua looked at the three people beside her and couldn't help but smile. She still said, "Forget it, Captain He. I'll practice by myself." He Tianshu said, "Okay, up to you. I'll have Nie Xiaoer bring some breakfast to your room. Hurry up and eat, then go work in the herb field." Chapter 112. Zhang Xiaohua felt a burst of warmth when he heard the faint tone and the ordinary words. Although it was a normal concern, there was a saying, "Don't be afraid of not knowing the goods, be afraid of comparing the goods." He Tianshu and the others' daily care for Zhang Xiaohua was immediately different from the grievances Zhang Xiaohua suffered in the Qingyi and Little Hat room. It was no wonder that Zhang Xiaohua was grateful. After reminding Zhang Xiaohua, He Tianshu and the others hurriedly left. The daily cultivation of the herbal field was still very easy to handle. In fact, it didn't matter if Zhang Xiaohua wasn't there. However, those seeds that had never sprouted were still a big mountain in He Tianshu's heart. He couldn't rest until he removed them. Zhang Xiaohua saw that they had left and hurried back to the house. Although the food in the house was simple, Zhang Xiaohua still ate it with relish. He then went out to be a monk and hit his own clock. During the lunch break, Zhang Xiaohua stayed in his house. He took a branch and carefully simulated the feeling that he found in the morning. Sure enough, when his speed reached a certain level, the warm current immediately appeared. Zhang Xiaohua had a realization in his heart. Although the reason for the warm current's appearance was still unclear, one thing was certain. That was, the changes of this sword move should be performed at this speed. It was the best. Since he had this understanding, Zhang Xiaohua continued to perform the changes of this sword move at this speed. The warm current also continued to appear. Zhang Xiaohua then realized that from the beginning of his sword move changes, the warm current came out from a certain place on his left shoulder. As the sword move changes were performed, the warm current flowed along his shoulder to his palm. It didn't disappear until the sword move changes were performed and the warm current flowed to the branch in his left hand. After practicing for an entire afternoon, Zhang Xiaohua finally memorized the sword move changes with his left hand. The speed of the sword move had also stabilized. When he reached the point where he could casually perform a sword move change, the warm current would appear. Only then did he stop. The practice at night was out of Zhang Xiaohua's expectations. Under Elder Yu's supervision, Zhang Xiaohua performed the sword move with his right hand again. He originally thought that he wouldn't be able to succeed like before. However, perhaps it was because he had been practicing with his left hand, but Zhang Xiaohua's right hand was also fixed at the same speed. Unexpectedly, he was able to perform the sword move successfully. Even though it was just a beginner and there were many areas that could be improved, Zhang Xiaohua's right hand had just recovered from its injury. It should have something to do with the inflexibility of his fingers. Elder Yu was also very surprised. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua practicing in the morning, he thought that with his aptitude, he would need a few more days of practice before he could master the sword move changes. However, it seemed like he had underestimated him. Elder Yu was very happy in his heart. He let Zhang Xiaohua practice again. When he saw that he had really mastered it, he said, "Zhang Xiaohua, I didn't think that you would be able to master it so quickly. This is a bit out of my expectations. However, you don't have to be proud. I only practiced this move for half a day. My aptitude is very ordinary in the Jianghu. If it was someone else with talent and intelligence, they would probably be able to master it after watching it twice." Zhang Xiaohua naturally didn't feel any sense of pride. He immediately said, "Elder Yu, don't worry. I know my own aptitude. This is the result of practicing many times." Elder Yu was very satisfied. Actually, there are times when a person's strength is limited. You don't have to worry too much about it. Just do your best. You must have gone through a lot of hardships to be able to learn the first move. I also know that. Since you've already learned the first move, I'll teach you the second one in a while. However, you shouldn't exhaust your injured bones at this stage. As the saying goes, more haste, less speed. You must remember this. Zhang Xiaohua was very happy when he heard that he could learn the second move. He didn't pay too much attention to Elder Yu's words. Actually, Elder Yu had wanted to teach Zhang Xiaohua the first move in the morning. However, he was very happy when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua had learned the first move. He took advantage of the moonlight and practiced the second move in the forest. When Zhang Xiaohua roughly looked through it, he explained it in detail. When he saw that Zhang Xiaohua's brows had relaxed, he knew that she had understood it. Only then did he slowly practice it again and let Zhang Xiaohua look at it carefully again. Although there were 19 variations to this sword move, they were all based on this sword move. The first variation was the hardest to learn. After learning the first variation, the other variations would all be very similar. Naturally, it would be very easy to learn the second variation. Therefore, Elder Yu spent much less time teaching the second variation than the first variation. It was a pity that Elder Yu had overestimated Zhang Xiaohua's comprehension ability. Although Zhang Xiaohua should know how to practice it, or perhaps he had already learned it in his heart, the branch in his hands couldn't move according to Elder Yu's requirements no matter what. Under Elder Yu's tightly furrowed brows, Zhang Xiaohua helplessly put down the branch. After all, his right hand was starting to hurt again. He couldn't neglect the fundamentals and focus on trifles. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's dejection, Elder Yu helplessly patted him on the shoulder. "It's fine. You should think about it more in your heart. This isn't the first time you've done this. Take a rest and continue practicing tomorrow." After he finished speaking, he turned and left. Zhang Xiaohua felt a little upset when he saw Elder Yu leave. No normal person liked to be looked down upon. Even if he knew that his aptitude wasn't good, he couldn't accept being looked down upon by others again and again. Thus, he picked up the branch again. However, this time, he had learned his lesson. He didn't use his right hand to practice it, but his left hand first. He first simulated the changes in his left hand in his mind before slowly moving his left hand. After repeating this a few times, he finally memorized the changes and found the feeling of noon. He followed the speed of the first move and as expected, the warm current appeared again, just like noon. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. He knew that he had found the right path. Thus, he used the moonlight to practice. When he learned the second move, he practiced the first one again. He repeated this process repeatedly. It was as if Elder Yu was teaching him to use his left hand. The next day, Zhang Xiaohua still practiced a set of 100 incomplete fist moves and practiced the 2 sword moves while waiting for Elder Yu to arrive. However, after waiting for a while and seeing that no one was coming, Zhang Xiaohua didn't wait any longer. Zhang Xiaohua's right hand had recovered after a long rest and was no longer sore. He picked up the branch again and repeated the sword moves in his mind as he practiced the second move at a certain speed. It was strange. He couldn't complete the move no matter what last night, but after a long rest, he was able to perform it this morning. Although it wasn't as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water, he still managed to learn it. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have realized that to learn the second move, he had to use his left arm first. He had to learn it before he could use his right hand. This was really strange. Could it be that his right hand was injured? When Elder Yu checked on Zhang Xiaohua's progress at night, he also found it very strange. He couldn't help but blush. It was said that one should teach according to the student's aptitude. It seemed that his teaching method was wrong. Perhaps he really wasn't suitable for teaching. Why couldn't he explain such a simple change clearly? He still had to let Zhang Xiaohua go back and think about it carefully. Only then would he be able to learn it. Thus, he said a little embarrassedly, "Zhang Xiaohua, is my teaching not good?" Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. "No, Elder Yu. You taught me very well." Elder Yu said, don't say anymore. I've taught a few disciples in the past, but they couldn't learn well and didn't make any name for themselves in the martial arts world. Today, I'll teach you a few sword moves, but you still can't understand them. Zhang Xiaohua was even more confused. He could only say, "Elder Yu, I'm very grateful that you're the only one teaching me sword moves. If I can't learn it, it's because my aptitude isn't good enough. I remember telling my second brother that if others can learn it once, I'll practice it 10 times, 20 times, 100 times until I learn it." When Elder Yu heard this, he agreed in his heart. You're right. Although there's no lack of talented people in the martial arts world, they're still very rare. People like you and I are just ordinary people. Naturally, we have to put in more effort than others in order to achieve good results. Zhang Xiaohua, you've done very well. After that, Elder Yu didn't consider whether it was his teaching method or Zhang Xiaohua's comprehension. Just like a few days ago, he carefully explained the sword moves and slowly demonstrated them. When Zhang Xiaohua felt that she understood, he turned around and left, leaving Zhang Xiaohua alone to practice. He still didn't appear the next morning, letting Zhang Xiaohua experience it herself. He only appeared the next night to check on her learning progress. In this way, Zhang Xiaohua learned one move a day until she learned the 16th move. However, there was a problem with the 17th move. After Elder Yu taught her, Zhang Xiaohua memorized it in her heart. She could use her left hand, but the warm current didn't appear. Zhang Xiaohua thought that there was a problem with her speed. She tried again and again, but the warm current still didn't appear. Then, Zhang Xiaohua tried to use her right hand, but it just didn't work. There were always some details that she couldn't handle. Zhang Xiaohua practiced alone for another 2 days, but she still couldn't learn the 17th move. Elder Yu thought about it and concluded that it was because her right hand hadn't fully recovered and wasn't as nimble as a normal person. Thus, he began to teach her the 18th and 19th moves. As Elder Yu expected, Zhang Xiaohua still couldn't learn the last 2 moves. After a few days, Elder Yu called Zhang Xiaohua to the forest and said, "Zhang Xiaohua, I've already taught you the 19 moves. Actually, I'm already very satisfied that you can learn 16 moves. To be honest, I thought that you could learn half of them, but you've already greatly exceeded my expectations." Zhang Xiaohua felt a little sour in her heart when she heard Elder Yu's words. However, the situation was as such and she couldn't refute it at all. Elder Yu continued, "You should have already memorized the remaining 3 moves. When your right hand fully recovers, you can continue to practice. Actually, the reason why I'm teaching you this move is to save your life. If you don't provoke someone too powerful, I believe that these 16 moves should be able to save your life. Also, what you've learned now is only the tip of the iceberg and doesn't have much power. You still have to memorize the sword technique diligently. When you learn inner strength one day, you'll be able to use it with the sword technique to display the true power of this sword technique." Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but ask, "Then what is its true power like?" Elder Yu smiled and said, "Look." As he spoke, he used all his strength to stab the big tree in front of him. The sharp edge of the sword pierced 3 centimeters into the tree. Then, Elder Yu circulated his qi and used a sword move to stab the tree. With a piercing sound, the long sword pierced deeply into the tree as if it was going to pierce through it. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The difference was too big. Elder Yu saw Zhang Xiaohua's expression and naturally knew what she was thinking. He said, "See, Zhang Xiaohua. If you don't learn inner strength, you're like a frog at the bottom of a well. You'll always be in a small circle and will never be able to understand the power of inner strength. Even if you learn the best sword technique in the world, the exquisite sword moves are still just a form. Without the soul of inner strength, you can never be considered a first-rate expert." Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's disappointed expression, he said, "I know you want to learn inner strength, but I can't teach it to you. I hope that you'll have the chance to learn a profound inner strength cultivation method in the future. Alright, this is all I can teach you. Practice well and hope that this sword move can help you in the future." With that, he flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but call out, "Elder Yu." Elder Yu turned around and asked, "What's the matter?" Zhang Xiaohua opened his mouth and said after a while, "Thank you, Elder Yu." Elder Yu smiled and said, "No need, Zhang Xiaohua. Practice well and I hope you'll succeed." With that, he floated away. Looking at Elder Yu's one-armed figure, Zhang Xiaohua felt extremely grateful. He wasn't related to Elder Yu in any way, and they didn't see each other often in the past. Yet, he had received such a huge favor from Elder Yu, and he had even imparted a sword technique to him. Although Elder Yu didn't mind it, how could he not take it seriously? Actually, Zhang Xiaohua wanted to tell Elder Yu about the sword in her left hand, but she didn't know where to start. Most of the 16 transformations on her left hand had changed beyond recognition. If she told Elder Yu now, would she let him know that she wasn't a good-for-nothing? If she could comprehend the side path, could she also use a sword with her left hand? However, when she thought about the might of Elder Yu's inner strength sword move, she didn't want to say it. What was her little bit of cleverness? She shouldn't show it off. However, Zhang Xiaohua really wanted to ask Elder Yu about the warm current. After standing for a while, Elder Yu was already far away. Only then did Zhang Xiaohua gather her thoughts and pick up the branch to practice in the forest. After practicing the transformations of the sword move, she felt bored and her right hand was sore, so she switched to her left hand. When she practiced the sword move with her left hand, it was different. The warm current flowed through her left arm, making it feel very comfortable. After the 16 transformations of the sword move had been mutated by Zhang Xiaohua, she could actually link them together. From the first to the 16th transformations, in addition to the changes in her footwork, it was really like a set of sword moves. Practicing to her heart's content, she started practicing non-stop and entered a very peaceful state. She only wanted to wave the sword in her left hand around, as though she was born for the sword. She practiced from the 1st to the 16th transformations, then continued to practice the first transformations. After practicing for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua felt that there was a stuffy feeling in her chest. She wanted to spit it out, but she couldn't find a way to vent it. As the sword moved, she seemed to have found a target. Zhang Xiaohua opened her mouth and let out a long sigh of relief. Then, she followed the sword move and stabbed forward with the branch in her left hand. The warm current in her left arm naturally flowed along with it. Just as the branch was about to hit the tree in front of her, she heard a muffled sound and the branch actually pierced into the trunk. Then, she broke into pieces and fell to the ground. Only then did Zhang Xiaohua wake up from her dream. She stared blankly at the branch in her hand and then at the branch in front of her. She couldn't believe that she had done this. If Elder Yu had used his strength to push the sword 3 inches into the tree trunk, Zhang Xiaohua felt that if she used her strength, she might be able to push the sword 5 inches into the tree trunk. However, it was impossible for Zhang Xiaohua to do it like how Elder Yu had used his internal energy. Furthermore, it was impossible for Zhang Xiaohua to do it. Was she considered an expert? However, when she walked forward and used her thumb and index finger to pinch the branch, she easily pulled it out without using much strength. Only then did she see that there was a hole in the tree trunk that was neither deep nor shallow. It was just a hole. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh at herself. She looked at herself as a poor person who had just received a few dozen taels of silver. She thought that she knew that she was the richest person in the world, but she didn't know that this amount of silver was a joke in the eyes of the real rich. She thought that her martial arts were so good that she could push the branch into the tree trunk, but now, it seemed that it was just a small hole. Shaking her head, Zhang Xiaohua casually threw away the branch in her hand. Feeling that the sky was getting dark, she picked up the lantern and slowly walked back into the house. Only that small hole was left in the tree trunk. The pitiful Zhang Xiaohua was regretting his arrogance, but he didn't know that he had really underestimated himself this time. Even if it was Elder Yu, he wouldn't dare to say that he could push the branch into the tree trunk and leave a hole. If Elder Yu saw Zhang Xiaohua's sword, his eyes would definitely pop out. It was a pity that Zhang Xiaohua only saw the sharpness of the sword. Although he knew that the blunt part of the branch wouldn't be easy to push into the tree trunk, his usual attitude confirmed that he had made a mistake in his judgment. Sigh, the details determine success or failure. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to still be very inexperienced. He still had a long way to go. However, Zhang Xiaohua, who was walking on the road, didn't have this awareness. He had long abandoned the joy from before and was muttering in his heart. I've already learned this sword technique from Elder Yu, so when should I go to Elder Yu to get the fist manual? Chapter 113. The next day, it was raining heavily. After the autumn rain and the cold, the weather had already turned cold. There wasn't much work to do in the medicine field, so Tianshu brought Nie Xiao Er and the rest to walk around the medicine field before returning. Zhang Xiaohua was still thinking about her fist technique. When Tianshu returned, she couldn't wait to find out where Elder Yu lived. She opened an umbrella and walked towards the backyard. Elder Yu lived quite a distance away from Zhang Xiaohua's courtyard, but it was very close to the dining hall. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but think maliciously, was it because Elder Yu was old and couldn't walk properly? Was it because he didn't want to delay the meal? Even with Elder Yu's martial arts skills, he wasn't at the level where he could walk in the rain without getting wet. Thus, he stayed in the house and didn't go out. Zhang Xiaohua knocked on the door and entered the house. Elder Yu's house was very simple. It was even cleaner than Zhang Xiaohua's house, but there were a few more cabinets. When Zhang Xiaohua entered the house, Elder Yu was sitting cross-legged on the Kong bed. When he saw that it was Zhang Xiaohua, he slowly got off the bed and looked at Zhang Xiaohua's wet shoulders. Zhang Xiaohua, it's raining so heavily. Why didn't you stay in the house and think about that sword technique? What are you doing here? Could it be that you've improved again after a night? Zhang Xiaohua bitterly smiled and said, Elder Yu, do you think I'm a genius that only appears once every 50 years? Just those 16 transformations will take me a lifetime to learn, and I won't be able to master them like the back of my hand, not to mention the other 3 transformations. Look at my hand. As she spoke, she raised her right hand in front of Elder Yu and bent her fingers a few times. She continued, perhaps I'll only be able to learn the essence of the other 3 variations when my right hand can fully form a fist. Elder Yu comforted Zhang Xiaohua at this time, you don't have to give up. When the heavens are about to give you a great responsibility, they must first test your will. Perhaps this is the heavens' test for you. Zhang Xiaohua declined to comment and said, I've read this sentence in a book before. Maybe. Then, he frowned and said, Elder Yu, don't change the topic. I'm here today to borrow your fist manual. You promised me before. Elder Yu slapped his forehead and said, look at my memory, I'm really old now. I almost forgot. However, the fist art you are learning. Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Elder Yu, are you trying to persuade me again? Elder Yu fell silent. Zhang Xiaohua said, in life, one must have some goals. Before I came to Pingyang City, I wanted to practice martial arts. If I gave up because of the injury on my arm, wouldn't it be too hasty? Moreover, my injuries aren't that serious. Elder Yu, don't you only have a right arm? Aren't you also a martial arts expert? Elder Yu smiled bitterly and said, I knew you would say this to me. Actually, you only know one thing and not the other. First of all, before I was injured, my martial arts were only second-rate in Jianghu. Now that I have lost my left arm, my martial arts have been reduced to less than 60% of my peak. Moreover, I only got injured after I achieved great success in my martial arts. Although it affected my martial arts, it wasn't as serious as yours. For someone like you to have such a big problem in your palm before you started practicing martial arts, it would be difficult for you to achieve great success no matter what martial arts you practice. It's just like how a person's family has declined before he reached adulthood. If you want him to revive his family business, it will be extremely difficult. However, if he succeeds in starting his own business and his family falls, it will naturally be much easier for him to start his own business. It will even be more glorious than the former. When Zhang Xiaohua heard Elder Yu's words, her face was as gloomy as the sky outside. After a while, she said, but, I'm still unwilling to accept it. Elder Yu sighed and said, seeing how crazily you practice, I knew you wouldn't be able to let it go. That's why I taught you the sword moves. Hee, do as you wish. The martial arts manual is on the bookshelf over there. I haven't looked at it in a long time. Zhang Xiaohua followed his words and walked to a bookshelf. Sure enough, there were many books on the shelf. When she looked carefully, there were martial arts manuals and sword manuals. The collection was quite extensive. However, when Zhang Xiaohua flipped through the 10 or so manuals, she realized that they were all martial arts manuals that she had seen at the Lotus Flower Escort Agency before. They were also some of the more popular martial arts manuals in the martial arts world. Elder Yu also looked at Zhang Xiaohua flipping through this and that and felt that it was strange. He asked, you can take whichever book you want to read. Remember to return it to me. Zhang Xiaohua turned around and asked, Elder Yu, are there any other martial arts manuals? These seem to be common martial arts manuals in the martial arts world. Elder Yu smiled and said, Zhang Xiaohua, although these martial arts manuals are common in the martial arts world, they aren't something that just anyone can find. You can pick one and look at it first. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. I naturally don't have any of the martial arts manuals in the sect, so you don't have to look through them. If I could teach you, I would have told you long ago. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, then can you tell me what martial arts are taught in the sect? Or martial arts manuals? Elder Yu thought for a while, but still shook his head and said, these things, if you're fated, you'll know sooner or later. If not, what's the use of telling you? It'll only add to your worries. Then, he pointed to the martial arts manuals and said, don't look down on these manuals. Although they're the most common, they're also the most practical. After so many years and so many people's tests, if you can master them, it'll be an amazing thing. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but blush and said, "This, elder you know my aptitude. I always forget the moves, so there's nothing I can do about it." Elder Yu blinked and said, "Then all the more you should read through a manual properly. Only then will you be able to memorize it properly." Zhang Xiaohua said, "It's not like that, Elder Yu. Sigh, forget it, I'll just read this one." Seeing that she couldn't win against Elder Yu, Zhang Xiaohua didn't intend to explain and casually took out a manual. She didn't even look at the name and put it away. She bid farewell to Elder Yu and returned with a lack of interest. Elder Yu looked at Zhang Xiaohua's thin back and shook his head helplessly. He said in a low voice, "This child, Sai, she's really a little stubborn." Since he had some emotions, he stopped meditating and walked down from the Kong bed to the bookshelf that Zhang Xiaohua was looking at. Looking at the dusty bookshelf, Elder Yu couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He didn't know how long it had been since he looked at these things. Ever since he was injured, he had lost a lot of his ambition and didn't have the same motivation as Zhang Xiaohua. Perhaps he should do something else. After Elder Yu finished sighing, he turned around and suddenly found a book wedged between the bookshelf. He carefully pulled it out with a stick and found that it was another martial arts manual. He didn't know when it had fallen in there. Elder Yu blew the dust off it and casually placed it back on the shelf. Zhang Xiaohua held onto the manual and held onto the umbrella as she walked back. She was very depressed. To be honest, the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. She originally thought that she could get a few manuals from Elder Yu that she hadn't learned before to make up for her moves. Who knew that she would end up empty-handed? This result was something that she had never expected. But when he thought about it, this was normal. The Lotus Flower Escort Agency's martial arts training hall was a place for teaching and educating people. Naturally, there would be a sufficient collection of fist art manuals. Elder Yu, on the other hand, was merely interested in it. Since he could finish reading all the fist art manuals in the martial arts training hall, Elder Yu shouldn't have any new discoveries. In fact, it would be strange if Elder Yu really found a fist art manual that he hadn't seen in the escort agency. She had been too impatient before. Thinking up to this point, Zhang Xiaohua's depression lessened by half. The only thing left was where to find a manual. Did she have to go to the Misty School to find one? This was too unrealistic. Not long after, Zhang Xiaohua walked back to the small courtyard. The moment she entered the small courtyard, Zhang Xiaohua saw that the door to her room was open from afar. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel strange. Could it be that she didn't close the door when she went out? That's not right. She seemed to have closed the door before leaving. When she got closer, she heard a familiar voice coming from the room. Although she couldn't hear it clearly due to the sound of the rain, Zhang Xiaohua still quickened her footsteps and ran to the door, shouting, "Second brother, is that you?" As expected, Zhang Xiaohu's voice sounded from inside the room, "Xiaohua, you're back." When Zhang Xiaohua entered the room, she saw that other than Zhang Xiaohu, He Tianshu, and Li Jinfeng were also in the room. Zhang Xiaohu walked to the door and took the umbrella from Zhang Xiaohua's hands and helped her put it away. He was as attentive as when he was in Zhang Xiaohu's room at the escort agency. He Tianshu stood in the middle of the room. When he saw that Zhang Xiaohua had returned, he said to Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng, "Zhang Xiaohua is back, so I won't keep you company. You're welcome to come by often in the future." Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng quickly said, "Thank you, Captain He. Let's talk more in the future if there's a chance." He Tianshu nodded at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Take good care of your brother and friends." Then, he went back to his room. Zhang Xiaohua watched as He Tianshu left. He turned around and asked excitedly, "Second brother, why did you suddenly come to my place today?" "Oh right, young Master Li, are you free too?" Li Jinfeng walked forward and said with a smile, "You little rascal, you ran quite fast. I said that I would send you back to the villa last time." When I arrived at the escort agency after you were almost recovered, you and your second brother were not there. I asked around and found out that you had returned long ago. Your second brother actually ran out too. I made a wasted trip. It's my day off today. I was bored at the academy, so I came out. I wanted to see you, but I didn't know how to find you. That's why I dragged your second brother over. Zhang Xiaohua asked again, second brother, when did you come back? Did it go well? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, I've been back for a few days. Didn't I tell you that it was near Pingyang City? It's not that far. This is the influence of the Misty School. We just went out to gain experience. It's not a big deal. Then, he looked at Zhang Xiaohua's right hand and said, I've always wanted to come and see you. I don't know how your hand has recovered. There's nothing going on at the Heavy Rain Escort Agency today. We were just staying in the room when young Master Li came. We came to see you together. Zhang Xiaohua knew that her second brother and Li Jinfeng were worried about her. She stretched out her right hand and made a few forceful grabs. Look, it's fine now. Leader, he said that as long as I practice diligently, there's still hope for me to recover. Zhang Xiaohu did not expose her and said, that's the best. Take your time and practice more. Li Jinfeng was also very happy. He said, that's great. I'll be able to see you practice martial arts very soon. Oh right, I saw that there were books on your bed and table. Looks like you're also very focused on your studies. Not bad, you're actually proficient in both literature and martial arts. Zhang Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. She said, I'm not as good as young Master Li said. I just blindly read when I have nothing to do. Then, Zhang Xiaohua talked about some of the problems she encountered when reading books with Li Jinfeng. There were many questions, but when Li Jinfeng finished answering them all, he couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for Zhang Xiaohua. He said, Zhang Xiaohua, you're really not bad. If you didn't look at these questions in depth, you wouldn't have such deep feelings. You're really amazing. I admire you. Hearing Li Jinfeng praise his younger brother, Zhang Xiaohu was very happy. When the two finished their discussion, he interrupted and asked, Xiaohua, are you still practicing martial arts? Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, I'm still practicing, but I haven't made any progress. Zhang Xiaohu misunderstood. He thought that he was still practicing forgetful things and didn't know about Zhang Xiaohua's true situation. He smiled and said, it's okay. Practice slowly. One day, you'll succeed. Zhang Xiaohua said, I know, second brother. I haven't given up. I'm still working hard. Oh right, what about that internal strength cultivation method of yours? Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's expectant face, Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly and said, Sigh, don't be envious of me. This inner strength mantra is not that mysterious. You'll know when you start practicing it. Right now, I'm just barely able to sense qi. I've been running darts for a while now, so I haven't been practicing it myself. In my free time, I've been practicing my 6 complementary fists. However, I've listened to you and practiced the South Branch fists from time to time. After all, I've learned something from it. I've learned a lot from it. Zhang Xiaohua happily listened to his second brother's words. He was happy for his second brother's improvement. Suddenly, he seemed to have grasped something. But when he thought about it carefully, he didn't understand. Thus, he used his left hand to grab Zhang Xiaohu's arm and urgently asked, Second brother, what did you just say? Say it again. Zhang Xiaohu's mouth was crooked. He gasped in pain and said, Xiaohua, hurry and let go. Be gentle. Why did you use so much strength? Zhang Xiaohua finally realized that he had lost his composure. He quickly let go and said embarrassedly, second brother, I'm sorry. What you said just now seemed to have reminded me of something. Don't mind it. Hurry and say it again. Zhang Xiaohu was confused and said, Didn't I just say that I listened to your suggestion and practiced the Nanji Quan? It's a good idea to learn from my previous fist techniques. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, that's not it. What else? Zhang Xiaohu frowned and said, also, the internal strength cultivation method isn't as mysterious as you think. Right now, I only have a bit of qi. I didn't say anything else. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment again, but still shook his head. Zhang Xiaohu had no choice and said, that's all. I didn't say anything else. When I was running darts, I couldn't calm down and practice the internal strength cultivation method. I could only practice fist techniques. Other than the Liuhe Quan and the Nanji Quan, I'm not very familiar with the others. Hearing the three words, Liuhe Quan, Zhang Xiaohua's mind flashed. Hee, that's right. It's this Liuhe Quan. No wonder second brother said something that moved him so much. He had practiced more than 100 fist techniques, but he didn't learn this Liuhe Quan. AI, what did it mean to turn a blind eye to something familiar? It was probably referring to this kind of situation. Actually, this matter was extremely coincidental. When He Tianshu was teaching Zhang Xiaohua fist techniques, Zhang Xiaohua mentioned that he had seen others execute the Liuhe Quan, but he didn't manage to master even half a move. Furthermore, the Liuhe Quan was famous for its complexity. When He Tianshu saw Zhang Xiaohua's terrifying memory, he couldn't remember to teach him this fist technique no matter what. Perhaps he had chosen to forget. When Zhang Xiaohua was studying the fist technique manual at the Lotus Flower Escort Agency, it wasn't that the agency didn't have a Liuhe Quan fist technique manual. However, because Zhang Xiaohu was famous for practicing the Liuhe Quan, many people went to the library to borrow the Liuhe Quan fist technique manual to study, hoping to learn something from it. Therefore, the library's fist technique manual had long been borrowed, and Zhang Xiaohua naturally didn't see it. During the days when Zhang Xiaohu was practicing the Liuhe Quan at the agency, Zhang Xiaohua was concentrating on studying other fist technique manuals. Of course, he didn't think of learning the fist technique that his second brother was so good at. In fact, the fist technique manual that fell from the gap of the bookshelf in Elder Yu's room might have been the Liuhe Quan fist technique manual. In short, due to various coincidences, Zhang Xiaohua finally remembered that he still had a fist technique that he was most familiar with. It was also the fist technique that he had seen for the first time, the Liuhe Quan fist technique. He hadn't learned it yet. Sigh, fate makes fools of people. However, since he found another fist technique that he hadn't learned yet, Zhang Xiaohua was still half happy and half worried. He might be able to complete the Liuhe Quan fist technique, or he might not. In short, he couldn't hold too much hope this time. He only hoped that he could learn a move or half a move from it. Since the person who could teach him this fist technique was his second brother, there was no need for Zhang Xiaohua to be polite. He immediately asked Zhang Xiaohu to set up a stance and teach him. Zhang Xiaohu was even more confused. They had only spoken for a short while, and this younger brother of his was already asking him to teach him the Liuhe Quan fist technique. Although he didn't mind, when he looked at Li Jinfeng standing beside him and sized up the slightly cramped room, Zhang Xiaohu was a little hesitant. Li Jinfeng seemed to have noticed Zhang Xiaohu's hesitation and hurriedly said, "Brother Zhang, you don't have to mind me. I know Xiaohua's temperament. Moreover, he is also my initiate student. I am also very happy to see his improvement." Zhang Xiaohua finally realized his rudeness and said, "My apologies, young Master Li. I will talk to you after I finish learning this fist technique." Zhang Xiaohu then said, "Xiaohua, isn't this room a little small? You might not be able to use it. My room at the escort agency is bigger than this, so I can use it in the room." Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his chin and said, "It's okay, second brother. You can practice slowly and just teach me. I will forget all these moves." Li Jinfeng was stunned when he heard this. "What was this? He was teaching you a fist technique, and you said you would forget it. Then why was he teaching you?" Zhang Xiaohu understood his meaning. He tilted his head and thought for a moment, then said, "All right, since it's like this, I will start teaching you now." Chapter 114. Finally, Zhang Xiaohu found out about his brother's abnormal memory. Zhang Xiaohu slowly practiced the Liuhe Quan from beginning to end 3 times. When he asked Zhang Xiaohua, she said she didn't remember, so Zhang Xiaohu had no choice but to continue practicing for the 4th time. Just as he got into a fighting stance, he was stopped by Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Second brother, don't practice for now. Let me practice it once. Watch." Thus, under Zhang Xiaohu's guidance, Zhang Xiaohua finally practiced the Liuhe Quan from beginning to end. Zhang Xiaohua didn't feel anything, but Zhang Xiaohu's head was covered in sweat. It was more tiring than practicing 10 times himself. Li Jinfeng, who was beside him, was even more puzzled. He knew Zhang Xiaohua's talent in learning literature very well. It was because of his abnormal memory that he was able to finish reading Shuo Wen Jie Zi in such a short time. Why did it become like this when it came to learning fist techniques? He really didn't understand. The thing that made Li Jinfeng vomit blood was yet to come. When Zhang Xiaohu took a short break, he asked Zhang Xiaohua if she had mastered it. Did he need to teach her for a while more? His concern was expressed in his words. However, Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "No need, second brother. It's fine as long as I can finish practicing it once." Li Jinfeng also chimed in, "Xiaohua, it's better if you practice a few more times. It's not easy for your second brother to come here. When he leaves, if you still want to learn, you won't be able to find him." Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, "It's fine, I've already learned it." Zhang Xiaohu thought that he was afraid that he would be tired, so he smiled and said, "Xiaohua, it's okay. Second brother isn't tired. Come, I'll practice again. Let's see." After saying that, he slowly practiced again. As he practiced, he explained his experience to her according to his moves, such as when to make a move, the angle of the move, the strength, and so on. Zhang Xiaohua nodded repeatedly as she listened. She thought, second brother is really good at practicing. However, he didn't seem to care. Li Jinfeng shook his head when he saw this. When Zhang Xiaohu was done, he withdrew his moves and stood to the side. He said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Xiaohua, why don't you practice once too? Let me see and give you some pointers." Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved her hand and said, "There's no need, second brother. You know that I've already learned it. I've also remembered what you said just now." Zhang Xiaohu was a little displeased and said, "Hurry up and practice. Let me see if you've learned it." Even at this point, Zhang Xiaohu still didn't really believe what Zhang Xiaohua had told him before. Not being able to learn all the fist techniques. Maybe it was because others didn't teach her well. He taught her in detail. If she had the aptitude that Li Jinfeng said that Zhang Xiaohua had, how could she not learn it? Unfortunately, the truth was really a blow to their confidence. Unable to withstand Zhang Xiaohu's urging, Zhang Xiaohua had no choice but to take up the starting position and practice the Liuhe Quan that she had just learned. What surprised the two of them was that the valiant Zhang Xiaohua had only practiced 6 moves before she forgot the following moves. Under Zhang Xiaohu's reminder, she continued to practice more than 10 moves. Helpless, Zhang Xiaohu reminded her again and again. Finally, after 5 or 6 reminders, Zhang Xiaohua finally finished practicing. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's innocent eyes, Zhang Xiaohu also asked helplessly, "Xiaohua, do you always practice like this when you learn fist techniques?" Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's affirmative nod, Zhang Xiaohu patted his shoulder and said, "It's been hard on you, Xiaohua." Li Jinfeng came over and asked, "Xiaohua, I think it's very strange. This move isn't very complicated. Although I haven't practiced fist techniques before, just based on my memory and watching the two of you demonstrate just now, I can also remember many moves." After saying that, Li Jinfeng rolled up his sleeves and practiced the Liuhe Quan. He was actually hit by more than 10 moves before he stopped. Then he asked Zhang Xiaohua, "Look, with my aptitude, I can learn more than 10 moves. How can you only remember 6 moves? It's really strange." Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and said, "Brotherly, to be honest, I really don't know. All the fist techniques I practice are like this. I forget a lot of each set of fist techniques. Li Jinfeng seemed to have seen the most miraculous thing in the world and said, it's really inconceivable. You can even memorize the Shuo Wen Jie Zi, so how can you not even remember this? Zhang Xiaohua said curiously, Brother Li, what's so strange about this? The Shuo Wen Jie Zi is just a book for young children. Practicing fist techniques is something that requires a lot of brain power. It can't be compared. Li Jinfeng smiled bitterly and didn't say anything. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohu said, then what about the fist technique manual from the escort agency? It's also something written in words. Can you remember it? Zhang Xiaohua said, I remember that very clearly. Zhang Xiaohu slapped his forehead and said, then it's settled. Tomorrow I'll borrow the Yoha Quan fist technique manual from the library. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, there's no need, second brother. I've already practiced all the fist techniques that I memorized a few months ago. I've basically forgotten all of them. Ah, Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng both opened their mouths wide. Zhang Xiaohua said, no matter if it's a fist technique manual or someone else's, as long as I practice it, I'll forget most of it. Those that I haven't forgotten, I won't forget them. As for how much I can remember, I'll only know tomorrow morning. Faint, Li Jinfeng screamed. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua with reverence and muttered, could it be that this is the legendary, don't ask for a deep understanding? After listening to Zhang Xiaohua's explanation and thinking about the situation with Zhang Xiaohua just now, Zhang Xiaohu finally believed what his younger brother said. However, he could only spread out his hands and couldn't help. His younger brother said that everyone had their own path. Their own path was only suitable for themselves. Others couldn't help even if they wanted to. Lunch was eaten with He Tianshu and the others in the dining room. Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng were full of praise for the food at Huanxi Manor. However, during the meal, Li Jinfeng looked around, which made Zhang Xiaohua very puzzled. This scholar usually paid attention to etiquette. Why was he so careless today? However, before Zhang Xiaohua could figure it out, Li Jinfeng said it himself. On the way back to the small house, Li Jinfeng secretly pulled Zhang Xiaohua and whispered, Xiaohua, why didn't I see Miss Chiu Tong when we were eating? Only then did Zhang Xiaohua realize that he was not the only reason this scholar had come here. He said with a smile, she was in the corner. Didn't you see her? Li Jinfeng couldn't help but turn around and look at the dining room from afar. He wondered, why didn't I see her? That's strange. I looked around the dining room at that time. Then, as if he suddenly realized something, he said, there are only 3 tables in the dining room. Where did the corner come from? There was no sign of a woman at all. Xiaohua, you're lying to me. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, it looks like Brother Li isn't muddle-headed. Ha, big sister Chiu Tong seemed to be eating with the manor lord and the others. They weren't together at the same time, and they might not be in this dining room. I really don't know the specifics. Anyway, I've never seen big sister Chiu Tong when I was eating here. Seeing Li Jinfeng's disappointed look, Zhang Xiaohua said, however, I think I met big sister Chiu Tong once when I was returning to the house after eating. Hearing this, Li Jinfeng's eyes immediately lit up. He really took one step at a time and kept looking back, hoping to see the figure he was looking forward to. It was a pity that he didn't see her even when he moved to the small courtyard. Sitting on the chair in the room, he really wanted Zhang Xiaohua to help him look for Chiu Tong. However, he also knew that Zhang Xiaohua was just a servant in the manor. He couldn't go wherever he wanted to go and look for Chiu Tong. Moreover, from Zhang Xiaohua's words, he hadn't seen Chiu Tong for a long time. Thus, he didn't think much of it. However, his eyes still glanced outside the room from time to time, hoping that something would happen. Unfortunately, things didn't go as he wished. The rain didn't stop for the entire afternoon. A few people passed by the door, but there was no sign of the woman. Seeing that it was getting late, Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng reluctantly prepared to leave. Zhang Xiaohu naturally couldn't bear to part with his younger brother. He held his hand and reminded him of this and that, but Li Jinfeng couldn't bear to part with Hu. The security of Huanxi Manor was very strict. When Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng came in, they had taken a waist token and were escorted in by a guard. Naturally, they had to be escorted out. When the three of them walked out of the small house, the rain outside was already pattering. It seemed that it was going to stop. Out of courtesy, Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng went to He Tianshu's room to say goodbye before leaving the small courtyard. Zhang Xiaohu also asked He Tianshu to take care of his younger brother in the future. He Tianshu naturally agreed and said some humble words before the three of them left the small courtyard. There was some distance from the small courtyard to the side door. The road was paved with bluestones, so it wasn't muddy. The three of them chatted as they walked. Li Jinfeng saw the fields by the side of the road and couldn't help but ask, "Xiaohua, what's planted in these fields?" "Some of them are crops. I recognize them." "What about those?" "They look like grass." "Are they vegetables?" Zhang Xiaohua thought about it and felt that it was better not to say. She stopped him from asking and said, "Brother Li, there are rules in the manor. There are many things that can't be told to outsiders. You don't have to ask too much." However, then she changed her mind and said, "If you have any books on growing herbs, you can help me collect some. I'm still willing to read more." When Li Jinfeng heard this, the corners of his mouth curled up and he smiled. Along the way, the sky was dark and the rain was no longer dripping. The sound of frogs and insects could be heard in the gully next to them. It seemed that the rain had stopped and they came out to get some fresh air. This scene reminded the two brothers of the Guizhuang house. Zhang Xiaohu said first, "Xiaohua, you've been out for a long time. Do you miss home?" Zhang Xiaohua said sadly, "Of course, I miss it very much. But I haven't made any achievements yet. If my family knew about it, it would be a waste of effort." Zhang Xiaohu also sighed and said, "Yes, I think so too. However, we should at least let them know that we are safe. Otherwise, father and mother will be worried at home." Li Jinfeng frowned and said, "Brother Zhang, you can ask someone you know to pass a message to your family. Won't that do?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly and said, "The two of us came here alone. We don't have any relatives or friends in Pingyang City. Where would we find someone we know to pass a message to?" Li Jinfeng smiled and said, "Brother Zhang, you seem to have forgotten that I'm from Pingyang City." Zhang Xiaohu said, "I know that young Master Li is from Lu Town. But haven't you been studying in the academy all this while? I remember that young master is also alone. How would you have the time to pass a message to us?" Li Jinfeng nodded and said, "You're right. However, the academy usually has holidays during the winter and summer. Although the time is not long, it is enough for me to go home. This summer, I'm studying in the academy and also helping Zhang Xiaohua with her enlightenment. Therefore, I didn't return to Lu Town. After some time, I can help you pass a message back." Zhang Xiaohua and Zhang Xiaohu said in unison, "Really, young Master Li. Thank you so much." Li Jinfeng waved his hand and said, "You don't have to be so polite. We are all strangers in a foreign land. We should help each other. This is just a small matter. Why do you have to be so polite?" As they spoke, they arrived at the side door. The guard at the door verified the waist token and asked Zhang Xiaohua to sign a booklet. Only then did he let Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng out. The three of them stood outside the door. Zhang Xiaohu looked at his younger brother. Zhang Xiaohua also tugged on her second brother's clothes like when they were young, unwilling to let go. Although the two of them were not too far away, it was inevitable that they would be reluctant to part with each other after not seeing each other for a month. On the other hand, Li Jinfeng was more open-minded and said, "The two of us brothers live in the same Pingyang city. If Xiaohu is busy practicing martial arts and doesn't have time to come, I will ask you to come over when I have the time. We can come more often in the future." Zhang Xiaohua thought about it and agreed. She let go of her hand and said, "Brother Li, if my second brother doesn't have time, it's good that you can come too." When I see Sister Chiu Tong one day, I will tell her that you want to see her. Is that all right? When Li Jinfeng heard this, he smiled and said, I like what you said. Don't blame me for coming to see you. However, you don't have to be too deliberate and say that I want to see her. Just mention it a little and that will do. Zhang Xiaohua did not understand and asked, Why is that? Li Jinfeng said, You don't understand. You are still a child. You will know in the future. Just do as I say. Zhang Xiaohua nodded her head in agreement. Then, Zhang Xiaohu and Li Jinfeng left Huanxi Mountain Village, looking back 3 times with every step. Zhang Xiaohua only turned and entered the village when the two of them could no longer be seen. The next morning, it was a sunny day and the sky was blue. Early in the morning, Zhang Xiaohua ran to the big tree where she often practiced martial arts. She thought about what Zhang Xiaohu had taught her yesterday. Using both her hands and feet, she slowly practiced the 6 he fists according to her memory. As Zhang Xiaohua expected, she had practiced the dozens of moves of the 6 he fists very thoroughly. There were only 7 moves left. Zhang Xiaohua repeatedly practiced these 7 moves to ensure that she did not forget them. She then stopped and stood there in a horse stance. In her mind, she began to familiarize herself with the combination of moves. However, this combination was like building blocks. The closer she got to the end, the easier it became. There were 100 incomplete moves in the fists technique, which meant that there were 7 broken parts. She tried each part with the 7 moves one by one. As expected, the success rate was quite high. She only needed to try the first part 4 times before she found the incomplete move. Zhang Xiaohua perfectly integrated it into the fists technique. The next few parts were even simpler. Soon, there was only 1 move and the last broken part left. Zhang Xiaohua was happy but also nervous. She put them together in her mind with some trepidation. This time, the heavens took pity on her and did not disappoint Zhang Xiaohua. That move was perfectly integrated into the fists technique. In an instant, the fists technique that had been completed in Zhang Xiaohua's mind was like a waterfall hanging over a river. A little person in Zhang Xiaohua's mind smoothly practiced this nameless fists technique from beginning to end. After the little person practiced a few times, Zhang Xiaohua also could not restrain her hands and feet. Following her thoughts, she also practiced in the open space in the forest. This fists technique had a total of 108 moves. Although it was the first time that Zhang Xiaohua had performed it completely, she did not know how many times she had practiced these moves in her mind. Other than the last 7 moves, the other moves were also practiced countless times by Zhang Xiaohua in this open space. Now that Zhang Xiaohua had finally gathered all of them, she practiced from beginning to end in one go. It was as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water. After Zhang Xiaohua finished practicing once, she was still not satisfied. She practiced 3 more times in a row before she finally stopped. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua not only felt relaxed and comfortable physically, but also incomparably happy mentally. It was as if she had let go of the golden chains and was incomparably free. The burden in her heart was finally thrown off. She could finally practice a complete set of fists technique like others. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were filled with light. During the day, when she was working in the fields, Zhang Xiaohua did not stop thinking about the 108 moves of the fists technique. She remembered that her second brother had once said that the fists technique had both offensive and defensive moves. Only then would it be perfect. What about the moves that she had forgotten from the 110 sets of fists technique? When Zhang Xiaohua finished thinking about them one by one, she realized that only 36 of the 108 moves were defensive moves. The other 72 moves were all offensive moves. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but be secretly surprised. These 72 were the number of earth fiends. Fiends were the fierce gods of heaven and earth. They were fierce and ferocious, which was the essence of offense. Heaven and earth had Tao, and the earth had Tao. Earth had Tao, and the heavens had Tao to repair it. 36 were the number of heavenly spirits. Spirit was the strength of heaven and earth, which was the essence of defense. Zhang Xiaohua thought of some words in the books that she had read. She was very doubtful and amazed. She did not know if what she had thought was correct. At night, in the forest, the night sky was as dark as ink. Stars dotted the sky, but there was no moon. Zhang Xiaohua practiced her fists alone in the open space. After a set of fists technique, her body felt incomparably refreshed. She then practiced the 16 changes of the sword technique. Only then did she sit on the ground. Yesterday's heavy rain had made the ground somewhat muddy. Today's sun did not completely dry the rainwater. Zhang Xiaohua pulled a blade of grass and held it in her mouth. She leaned against a tree and thought of a problem. Every fist's technique has a name. For example, Arhat fists, Nanji fists, and Erlang fists. What should I name this fist's technique? Xiaohua fists. No, that's too stingy. Piecing together fists. That sounds terrible. Sigh, it's really difficult. Zhang Xiaohua was a little disappointed. She then put her hands behind her head and hugged her head. She lay down on the damp grass. She looked up at the clear night sky. In the distance, countless stars twinkled. It seemed that Zhang Xiaohua had not seen the stars like this for a long time. The last time she saw the stars was when she was young. It was when her grandmother was still alive. She was chatting with her grandmother in the small courtyard of the Guizhuang house. Thinking of her grandmother, Zhang Xiaohua felt even more depressed. Was her grandmother fine in the sky? Which star was her grandmother's home? Please collect it. Thank you. Chapter 115. Looking at the twinkling stars in the sky, Zhang Xiaohua had endless thoughts. Suddenly, he felt that this twinkling was really familiar, but when he thought carefully, he still couldn't remember. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Recently, it was really strange. Occasionally, there would be some things that made him feel familiar, but when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't make sense of it. What did those stars in the distant sky have to do with him? How could they make him feel this way? Looking and looking, suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua saw the bright Big Dipper in the sky like a spoon. He remembered what the book said: in February, the elm falls, the chief arrives at the dawn. In August, the wheat grows, the heavenly spirit occupies the unitary. Also think of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, using the chief to cover the head, using the heavenly spirit to point forward. The moon of yin and yang, the first 3 stars are the heavenly spirit is the river chief, the yin construction moon is the opposite. Heavenly spirit, isn't it the handle of the Big Dipper, and in the constellation of the Big Dipper, there are 36 heavenly spirit stars. Don't they coincide with his 36 defensive moves? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but be happy. The name of the fist technique was Big Dipper Fist. As for the 72 offensive moves that coincided with the Earth Fiend, he threw it to the back of his mind and didn't think about it. That was because this Big Dipper Fist's name was so resounding. Hearing it, one would know that it was high-quality goods. As for where the moves included in it came from, who knew? If Zhang Xiaohua didn't say it, no matter how hard others racked their brains, they wouldn't be able to think that these moves were all pieced together from other fist techniques. Thinking that these moves had been forgotten by Zhang Xiaohua would be full of mistakes. After thinking of the name of the fist technique, Zhang Xiaohua jumped up from the ground. He picked up his fighting spirit again and continued to practice his Big Dipper Fist technique. After practicing for an unknown number of times, Zhang Xiaohua was a little tired. Just as she was about to practice for the last time, an unexpected situation suddenly occurred. When Zhang Xiaohua stood still with the pole and made the gesture to start the first move, he suddenly felt a very weak and slightly cold thing coming from his toes and flowing up his feet to his legs. Zhang Xiaohua was so scared that he quickly stopped. When he carefully felt it, the cold feeling immediately disappeared. Zhang Xiaohua was very strange. Was it his illusion? Thus, he changed to a dry place and started practicing again. Sure enough, as soon as he started practicing, that chilly feeling would come out, from his toes to the soles of his feet, and then flow up his legs. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and withdrew his stance. This inexplicable situation made him afraid. What if his cultivation went berserk? What would he do? Alas, it was really difficult to be self-taught. Zhang Xiaohua didn't even think about it. He didn't practice the mental cultivation method of internal strength at all. How could he be possessed by the devil? Maybe it was because he heard many people talking about it that he remembered this word. But Zhang Xiaohua thought for a long time and still couldn't figure it out. This fist technique was finally completed, but he couldn't practice it. What a headache. And didn't he practice for a long time just now? Why didn't he have this problem? Why not change to swordsmanship? Thinking of swordsmanship, Zhang Xiaohua thought of the warm current from the sword in his left hand. His heart lit up. Could it be that this chilly feeling was something similar to that warm current? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua understood a little. His fear gradually disappeared and he made up his mind. He wanted to see what this feeling was all about and how it could torment him. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua's expression turned cold. He got into a stance and started from the first stance. In Zhang Xiaohua's mind, the chilly feeling changed with each stance. It changed with each stance. It appeared from the toes of his left foot, went up his calf, flowed through the left half of his body, and reached his head. It happened to be the 54th stance. Then, it flowed through the right half of his body. With the last 108 stances, it disappeared into the toes of his right foot. After finishing the fist technique, Zhang Xiaohua carefully felt his body. There didn't seem to be any discomfort, as if there was no cold current passing through his body. When he thought about how the cold current flowed through his body, there didn't seem to be any special feeling. It was very smooth. It was just that when it flowed through his right hand, it was a little sluggish. Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. But he couldn't ask anyone else. He couldn't just go to He Tianshu and ask, "Captain He, when I practice, do my toes feel cold?" Perhaps He Tianshu would first ask Zhang Xiaohua, "Your shoes and socks don't leak air, right?" Perhaps, this was internal energy. Zhang Xiaohua had a flash of thought. If it was internal energy, then that would be awesome. His fist technique could actually cultivate internal energy. And, the name of the Big Dipper fist didn't seem to suit such an awesome fist technique. Then what should he change it to? Zhang Xiaohua was very conflicted. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Alright, he'll call it the Big Dipper fist. What a resounding name. He really admired his own idea. As for whether that chilly feeling was internal energy, he would wait until he saw his second brother next time to ask him in detail about how he cultivated internal energy. Zhang Xiaohua made up his mind and prepared to go back. After all, it was already late at night and he still had work to do tomorrow. However, the chilly feeling urged Zhang Xiaohua to get into a stance again. He prepared to experience it one last time. But when Zhang Xiaohua started practicing, he was stunned. That cold current actually didn't appear. When Zhang Xiaohua finished practicing the 108 moves, it still didn't appear. Zhang Xiaohua was completely dizzy. He was speechless. He took the lantern and went back. Fortunately, he didn't think of telling He Tianshu. How could he explain this feeling to him? Walking on the road, Zhang Xiaohua kept thinking about this problem. Why did this feeling sometimes appear and sometimes not? Until late at night, when Zhang Xiaohua was sound asleep, there was still no result. Early in the morning, Zhang Xiaohua came to the open space in the forest early. First, he practiced the sword in his left hand for a while. Now, the warm current in his left arm would appear from time to time. Although he didn't use a branch to stab a tree, Zhang Xiaohua felt that this warm current was beneficial to him. Then, he practiced the sword in his right hand for a while. Zhang Xiaohua felt that after many days of practice, his right hand's fingers seemed to be a little more flexible. It was just a feeling, but he didn't know whether it was true or not. When he finished practicing the sword moves, Zhang Xiaohua began to practice his set of Big Dipper magical fist. After practicing a few times, that cold current didn't appear. Zhang Xiaohua was very disappointed. He clearly knew that it wasn't his illusion, but it didn't appear again. There was really no good way. Seeing that it was still early, the green-clothed little hats probably hadn't woken up yet. He Tianshu and the others had just gotten up to practice, so Zhang Xiaohua began to practice again. There was no other way. Other than that sword move, he only knew this set of fist moves. If he practiced the sword move for a long time, his fingers would hurt, so he could only practice this. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was immersed in the pleasure of practicing, suddenly, that feeling appeared again. However, this time, it wasn't a cold feeling, but a bit of warmth. Zhang Xiaohua was immediately overjoyed. He carefully comprehended every move, afraid that he would miss something. However, everything was still yesterday's reenactment. There was nothing strange about it. When Zhang Xiaohua finished performing it and performed it again, the feeling was gone again. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua understood. Whether it was the appearance of the warm current or the cold current, it was related to the number of times he practiced. When he practiced to a certain number, that feeling would appear once. Then, he would have to count it again. When it accumulated to a certain number, it would appear again. Zhang Xiaohua thought about it carefully and understood. This morning, he had done it 10 times. It was on the 9th time that he felt the warm current. With this discovery, Zhang Xiaohua seemed to know that his set of Big Dipper magical fist was practiced 9 times each time. When the warm current flowed throughout the body, it would achieve the best effect. Zhang Xiaohua practiced every day in the morning and in the evening. The 108 moves took a lot of time. To be able to practice 9 times was already a big waste of time. No matter how hard he practiced, he couldn't practice the second 9 times. Then, practicing beyond 9 times might not be effective. Of course, these were all Zhang Xiaohua's guesses. In the next few days, Zhang Xiaohua hid in the forest to practice his Big Dipper magical fist. In order to practice better, Zhang Xiaohua would also come to the forest during his afternoon break. Moreover, after several attempts, Zhang Xiaohua found that when he practiced the Big Dipper magical fist in the morning, his toes would feel neither cold nor hot. At noon, it would feel hot, and at night, it would feel chilly. It was different 3 times a day. Zhang Xiaohua found it very strange. In the beginning, Zhang Xiaohua was still a little nervous. After all, it was something that fell from the sky. Who knew if it was good or bad? But after a few days of practice, his whole body didn't feel any discomfort. This meant that there was no harm. Zhang Xiaohua naturally felt relieved. Ever since Elder Yu finished teaching Zhang Xiaohua the sword moves, he would occasionally come to check on his practice in the first few days. However, he didn't come near and only watched from afar. He approved of Zhang Xiaohua's diligence and didn't come over anymore. Recently, Elder Yu found out that Zhang Xiaohua didn't even rest in the afternoon. His heart couldn't help but ache. In fact, Elder Yu's feelings towards Zhang Xiaohua were very ordinary at first. He only felt that this child was down-to-earth, hardworking, and had an unusual dedication towards martial arts. It was just that his aptitude was extremely poor, so he didn't have any other thoughts. Later on, when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua's right hand was crippled and his bones were shattered by internal energy, he continued to practice his fist techniques as usual. Even though he didn't have a master to guide him, his fist was still full of energy. Thus, when he thought about his own left arm, he sympathized with him and taught him an unknown sword move that he had learned. Even though Zhang Xiaohua didn't learn it completely due to his aptitude, Elder Yu still liked this stubborn, stupid child. When he saw that Zhang Xiaohua was also practicing martial arts in the afternoon, he naturally knew that he wanted to improve his sword or fist techniques. However, Elder Yu understood the principle of not overdoing it. Elder Yu was worried that Zhang Xiaohua would hurt his body if he overdid it. Thus, one afternoon, when Zhang Xiaohua was practicing his sword, he quietly appeared. When Elder Yu appeared, Zhang Xiaohua was coincidentally practicing his sword with his right hand. When he saw Elder Yu's sneaky figure, Zhang Xiaohua was stunned for a moment before she smiled. She didn't stop her sword technique, but picked up a tree branch and stabbed it at Elder Yu. When Elder Yu saw the tree branch coming over, he was also stunned for a moment before he shifted his body and dodged it. However, Zhang Xiaohua didn't stop her attack. She took a step forward and changed into another form as she continued to stab. This sword technique was taught by Elder Yu, so he was naturally familiar with the changes within the technique. When he saw that Elder Yu was practicing with Zhang Xiaohua, he was delighted. He didn't retaliate and changed his body to match with Zhang Xiaohua's sword technique. By the time Zhang Xiaohua finished her 16 changes, not a single leaf or branch had touched her body. When Zhang Xiaohua stopped her sword technique and kept the tree branch, Elder Yu finally stopped and said with a smile, "Zhang Xiaohua, you've learned well. You're very sharp with these changes. If I wasn't familiar with the sword technique's changes, I would have been stabbed by your tree branch." Then, he said, "During this period of time, your right hand's fingers have become much more nimble. You're also very familiar with the sword technique's changes. However, your strength is still far from enough. It's probably because your fingers aren't strong enough yet." Zhang Xiaohua nodded with a smile, "That's right, Elder Yu. During this period of time, my fingers have become much more nimble after practicing the sword technique's changes. In the past, my fingers would ache after practicing once or twice, but now, they're much better." Elder Yu continued, "Then you don't have to be proud. Have you not mastered the last 3 changes yet?" Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's face turned bitter. Elder Yu was right. No matter how hard Zhang Xiaohua practiced, she couldn't master the last 3 changes. It was either she couldn't keep up with the pace, or she couldn't use the tree branch to stab it out. In short, her entire body was uncoordinated. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua like this, Elder Yu said, "Even if you can't master it, you don't have to practice day and night. Didn't I tell you to stop before it's too late? Sometimes, rest is the best way to cultivate." Zhang Xiaohua was extremely touched. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Elder Yu then asked kindly, "How's your recitation of the sword technique?" Zhang Xiaohua followed his instructions and recited the sword technique word by word. Elder Yu was even more gratified when he heard her reciting it word by word. He patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder and said, "Very good. You're actually able to recite it word by word. You must have put in a lot of effort. Alright, let's stop here for today. Rest well and don't tire yourself out. Come, let's go back together." Actually, Zhang Xiaohua really wanted to say, "Elder Yu, please let me off. I still haven't finished practicing the Big Dipper mystical fist. Can you let me practice for a while more?" But when she saw the elder's concerned expression, Zhang Xiaohua still lowered her head and obediently followed him back. In the following period of time, Zhang Xiaohua had already gotten used to this kind of lifestyle. She practiced martial arts 3 times in the morning, noon, and night, and worked in the medicinal field on a daily basis. Those tasks were simply too easy for a country bumpkin like Zhang Xiaohua. She only needed to be a little more careful and she could do it perfectly. As for the medicinal plants that he Tianshu and the others were worried about, Zhang Xiaohua didn't have the slightest opinion about it. He only knew that the seeds would sprout once they were planted. How would he know why they wouldn't sprout? At this time, Zhang Xiaohua finally understood the feeling of her second brother, Zhang Xiaohu, concentrating on practicing a set of martial arts. Those familiar moves were like flowing clouds and flowing water, like a dancing poem. Only with the whistling of his fists and kicks could Zhang Xiaohua feel a kind of true feeling. He liked this kind of feeling of movement. Late at night, under the oil lamp, Zhang Xiaohua would often read some miscellaneous notes and ancient books. From between the lines, he read about the life he had never experienced and the places he had never been to. It was as if there was another world in those books that was slowly opening up to him. He gradually fell in love with this kind of life. Although Zhang Xiaohua had always believed that the Big Dipper magical fist that he practiced could produce internal energy, he didn't know what internal energy was. He had always wanted to ask He Tianshu, but seeing He Tianshu frowning every day, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to disturb him. If he asked He Tianshu, he wouldn't want to. If he practiced internal energy, then so be it, but if he didn't, then wouldn't he be laughed to death by them? After thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua still decided to make a trip to the Lotus Flower Escort Agency to listen to Zhang Xiaohu's opinion. He first asked for leave from He Tianshu, then Zhang Xiaohua received his waist token from the guard at the side door. Only then did he calmly walk out of Huanxi Manor. Walking on the road, the first thing that came to his mind was that, when the cart reaches the mountain, there must be a road. Where there is a road, there must be a swift carriage. Although Zhang Xiaohua really wanted to sit in a carriage, when he thought about the money in his arms and his parents in the countryside, he restrained his desire. In fact, with Zhang Xiaohua's current condition, even if he ran to the escort agency, it wouldn't be a problem. Sitting in a carriage was just a child's dream. After Zhang Xiaohua overcame this thought, he walked and ran, and soon arrived at the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. Today, the escort agency didn't seem to be busy. Sparrows could be seen in front of the door. The guard recognized Zhang Xiaohua. Looking at him, who looked more and more like Zhang Xiaohu, he greeted him and let him in. When Zhang Xiaohua arrived at second brother's room, he found that Zhang Xiaohu wasn't in the room. Fortunately, the room wasn't locked. Guessing that he was at the escort agency, he pushed the door open and entered. The room was very clean. Zhang Xiaohu probably cleaned it every day. Thinking about how messy her room was, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but blush. The room was still the same as before. There weren't many changes. However, there was a stack of books on the table. Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. When did second brother become literate? When he walked forward, he discovered that the books were actually about the cultivation of medicinal herbs. There were also a few thick history books. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. Li Jinfeng really took what he said to her last time seriously. He actually found some books on this topic. He probably didn't have time to look for him, so he left them with second brother for now. With nothing to do, Zhang Xiaohua casually pulled out a book from the pile and read it with great interest. There was a lot of information written in the book. Most of it explained how certain herbalists cultivated and managed their plants. It was very related to what he did on a daily basis. Thus, when he compared his own experience with what he did on a daily basis, Zhang Xiaohua actually found quite a few mistakes that he usually overlooked. Thus, he began to read even more seriously. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was engrossed in reading, Zhang Xiaohu pushed the door open and entered. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua in the room, he was very happy and called out, "Xiaohua, when did you get here?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at the sky and said, "I've been here for a while. You weren't in the room, so I was reading by myself." Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "Oh, those books were brought by young Master Li. He said that he would bring them over the next time we visit you. Since you're here this time, we'll save ourselves the trouble. You can take them with you when you leave. Please collect them. Thank you." Chapter 116. Zhang Xiaohua put down the book and roughly explained the situation to his second brother. Naturally, Zhang Xiaohu was still concerned about his right hand. Helpless, Zhang Xiaohua could only raise his right hand in front of his second brother and bend his 5 fingers a few times. Looking at his brother's somewhat thin right hand and his somewhat nimble fingers, Zhang Xiaohu felt somewhat gratified. He was also filled with hope that Zhang Xiaohua's right hand would recover to its original state. After chatting for a while, Zhang Xiaohua finally asked the main question, "Second brother, how's your internal energy practice going?" Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's question, Zhang Xiaohu's eyes couldn't hide the excitement in them as he said, "Why don't you guess?" Seeing his second brother's expression, Zhang Xiaohua naturally knew. Pleasantly surprised, he said, "Second brother, did you succeed?" Zhang Xiaohu said, "Yes, a few days after coming back from your place, I successfully found a sense of qi." Zhang Xiaohua asked, Then, second brother, does finding a sense of qi mean that you've successfully practiced the internal energy practice method? Zhang Xiaohu shook his head and said, it's still early. Finding a sense of qi is only the beginning. The road ahead is still very long. Being able to find a sense of qi means that I can practice internal energy. With a direction, I can gather qi in my dantian and lay the foundation for circulating qi in my body's meridians in the future. If I can't even find a sense of qi, then there's no way for me to practice the internal energy practice method. These words made Zhang Xiaohua's head full of fog. Although he had read a lot of books during this period of time, and even read books about wuxia, he had never come into contact with anything related to internal energy practice methods. Zhang Xiaohu's professional names made him scratch his head. He could only ask, second brother, can you tell me what is a sense of qi, dantian, and qi gathering and circulating qi? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's expression, Zhang Xiaohu thought for a moment before getting up to take a look outside the door. Only after closing the door did he say to Zhang Xiaohua, actually, these names are very common things that anyone who wants to practice internal energy practice methods must know. It can't be considered confidential. Although the third master Chu said that the contents of the internal energy practice method cannot be revealed, I don't think these common sense things should be covered in this scope. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he said, second brother, if you really can't tell me, then forget it. I'll go back and ask Captain. Zhang said, if I can't tell you, then I won't tell you. Since I can tell you these things, why should I ask someone else? Zhang Xiaohua happily jumped up and said, I know that second brother is good to me. Then hurry up and tell me. Zhang Xiaohu organized his thoughts and tirelessly said, when it comes to internal energy, first we have to talk about the meridians. The meridians are the channels in our body that can circulate qi. Through these channels, qi can be sent to all parts of the body. When you use qi to make moves, there is also internal energy. Do you understand? Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, I understand. When a normal person makes a punch, they only have their own strength. If there is qi in the meridians of the fist, then there is also internal energy. Is it like this? Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, that's right. Therefore, cultivating internal energy is a process of accumulating qi. The accumulation of qi is a process from nothing. This process is called qi sensing. When there is qi sensing, then there is the first thread of qi. Usually, true qi was stored in a place called the dantian. It was right here, below the navel. When cultivating or exercising, true qi would come out of the dantian and flow along the meridians of the whole body or wherever you wanted it to go. Generally speaking, the process of circulating energy is the process of gathering qi. The more qi you use, the more internal energy you will have. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to be deep in thought as he said, last time, when Yu Dai used that purple sand palm, he used his inner strength. Could it be that he transferred his true qi from his dantian to his palm to produce such a large amount of power? Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, yes, the transfer of qi is a strict process. It has to follow a fixed route and cannot be disturbed. If there is a slight disturbance, then it will deviate from the original route and run into a fork in the road. If it is light, then it will lose control of the body. If it is heavy, then it will lose its life. This is what is often called qi deviation. Actually, when we practiced before, we didn't use qi, so we wouldn't have qi deviation, hee. Only then did Zhang Xiaohua realize that this was what qi deviation looked like. Then, Zhang Xiaohua continued to ask, then how is qi produced? Is it from the soles of the feet? Or is it produced from the fingers? Connecting it to the sudden hot and cold feeling and the way it moved in his body, Zhang Xiaohua faintly felt that it wasn't the qi that second brother was talking about. Instead, it was the warm current produced when he used the sword that was similar to qi. However, it did come from his shoulder and not from his dantian. Zhang Xiaohu thought for a bit and said, this question, I don't know if every qi cultivation method is the same. When I practice, I sit there with my 5 hearts facing the sky. My nose looks at my mouth and my mouth looks at my heart. Then I place my tongue on the top of my mouth and imagine the qi flowing from my forehead. Then I swallow it with the saliva in my mouth and guide the qi to my dantian. This process is very important. I have been doing this for a while and only recently have I truly gathered qi in my dantian. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. This process was very different from his own. However, he still didn't give up and asked, "Second brother, does qi have to be stored in the dantian? Does it go in from one part of the body and out from another part of the body?" Zhang Xiaohu was stunned and frowned. "This, I can't say. However, I heard from the third master Chu that the dantian is the center of qi. Without the dantian, you can't practice qi cultivation. Moreover, the martial arts of the Jianghu crippled people are aimed at breaking that person's dantian. I think that without the dantian, it might not be possible. Also, qi is transported out from the dantian when you want to use it. If it goes in from one part of the body and out from another, then how do you use it? Can it be called qi?" Then, he asked, "Xiaohua, why do you ask so many unimaginable things?" Zhang Xiaohua opened his mouth and wanted to tell the truth. However, when he thought of what second brother said about the consequences of qi deviation, he was afraid that it would affect second brother's cultivation. Moreover, he didn't know what it was, and if he told him, second brother would be worried. He might as well hide it from him. It wouldn't be too late to tell him after he figured it out. After making up his mind, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Aren't I just curious about qi cultivation? It's not easy to find someone who knows about it, so why don't I ask a bit more?" Zhang Xiaohu patted his chest and said with a worried expression, "The third master Chu also said that qi cultivation is very dangerous. Usually, it has to be done under the guidance of an experienced master. Otherwise, it's very easy to go into qi deviation. You can't blindly cultivate it." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I know, second brother. I do want to cultivate it, but where would I get the qi cultivation method?" Zhang Xiaohu also smiled and said, "That's true." Then, Zhang Xiaohu asked about Zhang Xiaohua's Liuhe fist. When he heard that Zhang Xiaohua only remembered 7 moves, he was flabbergasted and didn't know how to comfort Zhang Xiaohua. However, when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua himself didn't think much of it, he didn't say anything. In fact, he still wanted to ask him how he was doing with the fist technique. However, he thought that it wouldn't be good news. He was afraid that he would reopen the scar in his brother's heart and make him sad, so he didn't mention it again. The two brothers met and chatted casually. Time flew by and in the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. When the sky was almost dark, Zhang Xiaohua said goodbye to her second brother and returned to Huanxi Manor. When she returned to Huanxi Manor, the sky was already dark. Walking on the small path of Huanxi Manor with a few books on medicinal herbs in her hands, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel amused. She remembered that she had made a joke to Li Jinfeng last time and he actually took it seriously. He was really... No, when she thought of the last time Li Jinfeng came to Huanxi Manor, Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood that this young Master Li was really considerate. However, when she thought of elder sister Qiudong's kindness to her and Li Jinfeng's honesty and simplicity, Zhang Xiaohua was still willing to do something for them. However, she still didn't know how elder sister Qiudong felt about young Master Li. She would talk about it when she had the chance in the future. Entering the small courtyard and passing by He Tianshu's house, Zhang Xiaohua knew that He Tianshu should be inside when she saw that the lights were on. She looked at the books in her hands and came to the door. Before she could knock, He Tianshu's slightly hoarse voice came from inside, "Who is it? Come in." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She pushed the door open and entered the house. She asked curiously, "Captain He, I haven't knocked yet. How did you know that someone was here?" Seeing that it was Zhang Xiaohua, He Tianshu smiled and said, "Well, you'll know when you practice inner strength. When you channel your inner strength to your ears, you'll be able to hear movements within a few feet." Zhang Xiaohua said in surprise, "Ah. It's that magical." He Tianshu said, "It depends on the depth of your inner strength. Some people can even hear over 100 feet. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes sparkled as she looked up at him. However, she immediately remembered that she seemed to be able to feel the movements of people outside sometimes. However, it seemed that it was just a feeling. Then, He Tianshu asked, "You took leave to go to the Lotus Escort Agency today, right? How is your brother?" Zhang Xiaohua happily said, "Yes, Captain He. I haven't seen my second brother in a while. Let's go see him. He's pretty good. He's practicing inner strength." He Tianshu was a bit surprised and said, "You're able to sense qi so quickly?" Zhang Xiaohua proudly said, "Yes, didn't I say that my second brother is a genius?" He Tianshu knocked her on the head and said, "I just didn't think that your second brother would be able to sense qi so quickly. I didn't say that he was a genius. Sensing qi is something that is difficult for people with distracting thoughts. However, people like your second brother can't be considered a genius. Most of the Misty School's disciples will be able to sense qi in 2 or 3 days." "Oh, so it's like that." Zhang Xiaohua's mouth was wide open. She thought that her second brother was already her idol. If that was the case, then wouldn't all the Misty School's disciples be her idols? Idols were too cheap. Zhang Xiaohua looked at He Tianshu and asked, "Captain He, how long did it take you to sense qi?" He Tianshu scratched his head and pretended to be deep in thought and said, "I think it was 4 days ago. I wasn't very talented, so I was assigned to the pharmacy hall." Sigh, Zhang Xiaohua sighed and lowered her head and said, "I think I'll have to go to the cafeteria." "That's enough. It's not that easy to get into the Misty School's cafeteria." He Tianshu didn't hold back and said honestly. It hurt her pride. Zhang Xiaohua's expression didn't look too good. Unexpectedly, He Tianshu said, "If you were admitted to the Misty School when you were young, you might have been assigned to the Divine Engineering Hall." Zhang Xiaohua's face lit up and said, "Divine Engineering Hall? That sounds very impressive. What's it for?" He Tianshu said, "The Misty Sect has long had weapons. The strength of your hands is something they envy." "Ah, I see." Zhang Xiaohua completely understood that He Tianshu wasn't interested in her talent. However, it was strange. She didn't have such great strength in the past. How did she become so powerful now? Could it be because of the spring water? Just as she was thinking, He Tianshu asked, "By the way, why are you here?" Zhang Xiaohua then remembered why she came into the room and asked, "Captain He, I've noticed that you've been frowning recently. I heard from Nye Air that it's because of those medicinal herbs that won't germinate." "Yes, it's been almost a year. I'm a little worried." He Tianshu sighed and couldn't help but tell Zhang Xiaohua, "These medicinal herbs were planted at the beginning of this year. I don't know why, but they won't germinate. Actually, it's fine for me to stay here, but if I go on like this, I'll ruin the sect's important matters. Many medicines rely on these medicinal herbs, so..." As he spoke, he suddenly stopped and seemed to realize that he had lost his composure. He said embarrassedly, "Anyway, I feel a little guilty." Zhang Xiaohua raised the book in her hand and said, "Oh, when I went to the escort agency to look for second brother, young Master Li Jinfeng gave me a few books on medicinal herbs. I wanted to show them to you to see if they would be of any help." He Tianshu heard this and smiled as he patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder and said, "Zhang Xiaohua, thank you. You really put in a lot of effort." However, He Tianshu took the books and roughly skimmed through them. He said apologetically, "Although I can read, it's only limited to martial arts books. I can't understand these things. Moreover, the group of elders in the pharmacy hall study this every day. They probably read a lot. If there was a solution to this, they would have discovered it long ago." However, Zhang Xiaohua disagreed and said, "The contents of these books were written by people. Everyone may not see the same things and experience the same things. The ancients said that there are benefits to pooling the wisdom of the masses." He Tianshu was speechless. He didn't have the experience of learning the Fist of the North Star from an ordinary fist manual. Naturally, he scoffed. However, he immediately thought of something and said, "How about this, Zhang Xiaohua, among us, you are the only one who has an outstanding talent in literature, meaning, your martial arts talent is a mess. This task will be handed to you. Take a look at these books first. Then, if it's not enough, I'll borrow more from the pharmacy hall for you. What do you think? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. What was this? I was only kindly recommending an idea to you, and you're putting this task on me. Will you still let me speak in the future? Every time she provided a reasonable suggestion, he would say, good idea, I'll leave it to you. Who could stand this? It was purely bureaucratic. However, regarding He Tianxu's orders, Zhang Xiaohua was unable to refuse. She could only nod and agree. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's helpless expression, He Tianxu was equally helpless. Giving such a burden to a half-grown child was because he didn't want to extinguish Zhang Xiaohua's enthusiasm. It was also because he wanted to make a Hail Mary effort. It would be best if he could find a solution, but it didn't matter if he couldn't. It was just letting him read a few more books. However, the outcome was probably the latter. He Tianxu could guess it even with his heels. Zhang Xiaohua's head drooped. She carried a few books back to her house and lit an oil lamp. She didn't rush to open the books. Instead, she turned around and lit the lantern. She went out to the woods to practice her fist and sword techniques. Sword techniques were used to protect one's life. Naturally, the more proficient one was, the better. After many days of practice, the speed at which the warm current flowed from her shoulder to her fingertip seemed to have sped up. The speed at which she drew the sword with her left hand also seemed to have sped up. Moreover, the angle at which she drew the sword seemed to be stranger than before. Zhang Xiaohua simply couldn't figure out how she practiced the sword with her left hand. Could it be that the changes in this move would evolve as she practiced? The sword in her right hand was still the same. It didn't change along with the sword in her left hand. However, her right hand's fingers clearly felt more flexible. The injury was developing in the expected direction. What made Zhang Xiaohua most excited was the Big Dipper magical fist that she had pieced together. The 108 moves didn't have any changes like the sword in her left hand. Instead, it was the same as what she had learned before. Although it was different from what was taught or recorded in the fist manual, it had already been fixed. The feeling of flowing still appeared once after 9 consecutive practice. The only change was that in her perception, the flow seemed to have grown a little stronger. However, Zhang Xiaohua was still a little depressed. How good would it be if this flow could stay in her body? She could also use it. What was the use of it appearing and disappearing for no reason? Could it be that it was traveling in her body? She really couldn't understand. After her daily practice, Zhang Xiaohua returned to her house. She found the book she had already read in the morning and continued to read it with relish. Anyway, she had finished reading all the books in her house, and there was no place to find something to read for the time being. Now, Zhang Xiaohua had developed a good habit of reading. It was impossible not to read on weekdays. She would just treat these professional books as a pastime in her spare time. Therefore, in Zhang Xiaohua's life, in addition to the daily 3 times of practice in the morning, afternoon, and evening, there was an additional subject of reading. Other than working in the medicinal field, Zhang Xiaohua was holding a book. Zhang Xiaohua didn't just simply read. Most of the time, she also compared the contents of the book with the combination of theory and practice. However, the medicinal field managed by He Tianxu was small after all, and there were not many varieties. Moreover, there were many medicinal herbs that were not recorded in the book. As a last resort, Zhang Xiaohua often went to Tian Zhongxi's medicinal field to look for the real thing. Tian Zhongxi didn't mind. After all, he was a manager. He never got tired of asking. He appreciated Zhang Xiaohua's learning attitude very much. However, Ma Jing and the others in green didn't think so. Perhaps they were jealous that Zhang Xiaohua had a first-class meal, or perhaps they were jealous that Zhang Xiaohua could read and write. Their sarcastic words were endless. How could Zhang Xiaohua listen to them? She just treated it as a dog barking. Just in this constant barking and the ground full of chicken feathers, the days passed day by day. Chapter 117. However, when Zhang Xiaohua finished reading those books, she discovered that these books seemed to be too basic. She had a feeling that they were not enough to quench her thirst. If she wanted to use the things she learned from these books to solve the problem of medicinal herbs not germinating, it would be wishful thinking. Helpless, Zhang Xiaohua could only throw these books on the Kong bed. When she was bored, she would flip through them again. Without new books to read, Zhang Xiaohua once again lived a monotonous life of working and cultivating. Although reading books was a good habit, Zhang Xiaohua would never buy books for the sake of reading. Books could not be read unless they were borrowed. Zhang Xiaohua felt the same way in her heart. On the other hand, He Tianshu was used to seeing Zhang Xiaohua running around with books. Not long after, he discovered Zhang Xiaohua's abnormality. He asked with interest, thinking that Zhang Xiaohua had given up on her research. However, when he heard Zhang Xiaohua's reason, he didn't believe it at first. However, when he thought about how this person in front of him used Shuo Wen Jie to enlighten her, his brows relaxed. He snapped his right hand and said, "Isn't that easy?" Then he muttered in Nie Xiao'er's ear for a moment. Nie Xiao'er listened while sizing up Zhang Xiaohua from the corner of his eyes, making Zhang Xiaohua's hair stand on end. What was he doing? After he finished muttering, Nie Xiao'er left to carry out his orders. He Tianshu beamed at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "All right, you wait. I'll show you my methods in a while." Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and curled her lips, saying, "What methods are you playing? Making it so mysterious." "I'll just wait." This Nie Xiao'er left for half a day. He only returned to the small courtyard empty-handed in the evening. Seeing Nie Xiao'er return empty-handed, He Tianshu was very shocked and asked, "You didn't do it?" Nie Xiao'er said, "Elder, he said that our hall's books are only for the disciples to read. They cannot be borrowed from outsiders." He Tianshu frowned. "You didn't look for hall master Bai?" Nie Xiao'er smiled bitterly and said, "I did, but hall master Bai didn't pay much attention to me. He only said that you're trying to find any doctor when you're seriously ill. How can a child without any foundation solve the problem by just reading books? He told you to think of another way. He also told me to tell you that he's also discussing this problem with the elders in the hall. He told you not to mess around." He Tianshu's face alternated between red and green as he looked into Zhang Xiaohua's eyes. He felt very embarrassed, but he seemed to have thought of something. His face relaxed as he said, "Zhang Xiaohua, go back to your room first. I'll bring you those books in a while." Zhang Xiaohua looked at him curiously, nodded in agreement, and went straight back into the house. Since someone wanted to find books for him to read, of course he wouldn't refuse. Sure enough, not long after, He Tianshu came back with a grin on his face carrying a pile of books. He piled them on Zhang Xiaohua's Kong. He clapped his hands and said, "All right, Zhang Xiaohua, I finally found the books for you. Read them well." Zhang Xiaohua looked at the pile of books on her Kong in surprise and asked curiously, "So many, where did Captain he get them?" He Tianshu pretended to be mysterious. "Look at how powerful his methods are. How can such a small problem not be solved? Read carefully. Zhang Xiaohua, don't mind our hall master's words. I still say the same thing. It's best if it can be solved, but it's fine if it can't be solved. Just treat it as you reading books to broaden your horizons. Also," He Tianshu muttered to himself, "the Jianghu is dangerous. What can a child like you rely on? Learn more and you'll be able to live a good life." Zhang Xiaohua finally understood He Tianshu's painstaking efforts. She couldn't help but feel grateful. Humans weren't plants. How could they be emotionless? She and He Tianshu were neither relatives nor friends. Just living together for a short period of time, he took care of her in every possible way. Not only did he teach her fist techniques, he even pointed out the path for her future. It could be seen that this dangerous Jianghu wasn't just filled with traps and arrows. There was also warmth and care. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I understand, Captain He. I won't let you down. At least I have to learn more, right? He Tianshu nodded. It's good that you understand. Read your books yourself. I'm leaving. After saying that, he smiled and walked out. Zhang Xiaohua sent him to the door. When he left the house, she was about to turn around when she saw He Tianshu turn his head and say, Oh right, Zhang Xiaohua, I almost forgot. How's your practice of fist techniques? We haven't practiced together in a long time. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, It's all right, Captain He. I mixed the fist techniques you taught me and some of the fist techniques my second brother taught me together. I can practice them too. He Tianshu smiled and said, Not bad, Zhang Xiaohua. You know how to create your own techniques. You're promising. Practice well. When you have the chance, let me see it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Okay, no problem, Captain He. I can do it any time. He Tianshu said, You won't forget this time. Zhang Xiaohua said, I won't. Don't worry. He Tianshu said, Okay then. When I have the time, I'll see it. You read your books too. I'm leaving. After saying that, he walked out of the house. Zhang Xiaohua saw him leave and was about to turn around when He Tianshu turned his head again and said, Oh, I almost forgot. Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She turned around again and said, What is it, Captain He? He Tianshu said, I borrowed the book from the village head. When she heard that you were reading it, she was very happy. She said that when you're done, she has more. You can go and get it. You can ask Chiu Tong for it. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was very happy and said, Really? That's great. Thank you, Captain He. He Tianshu smiled and said, What are you thanking me for? Okay, go and read your books. After saying that, he walked out of the house. Zhang Xiaohua watched him leave. This time, she didn't turn around and waited quietly. He Tianshu was about to leave when he remembered something. He turned around and said, Oh, I almost forgot. Zhang Xiaohua, when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua was still standing there and looking at him with a smile and didn't turn around, he was stunned and said, Zhang Xiaohua, why aren't you reading? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I'm waiting for Captain He to tell me about, I almost forgot, again. He Tianshu smiled and said, I see. It's like this. Then, his expression became very strange. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, What's wrong? He Tianshu pursed his lips and said, I really forgot this time. Forget it, I won't talk about it. I'll tell you when I remember. After saying that, he turned around and walked out of the house. Zhang Xiaohua didn't move. She quietly waited for He Tianshu to leave. Then, she stuck her head out and watched as He Tianshu walked away and patted his forehead. When he entered his room, Zhang Xiaohua felt relieved. She closed the door and went to read on the Kong bed. He Tianshu entered the room. He was still thinking about what he wanted to say just now. He Tianshu kept tossing and turning in bed until it was very late at night. He Tianshu frowned and thought until a ray of light appeared on the horizon. He Tianshu suddenly sat up and laughed, I finally remembered. I want to tell Zhang Xiaohua not to read too late and to pay attention to rest. With the new program, Zhang Xiaohua was naturally happy and forgot about home. Every day, he read and practiced martial arts. He only hoped that these days would last. However, the more he read, the more he felt that the cultivation of medicinal herbs was complicated and profound. He really admired someone who could write so many things. At the same time, he was very grateful to Li Jinfeng for teaching him how to read. He was also very grateful to Huanqi Manor for giving him the opportunity to read. He was very grateful to the Manor Lord for lending these books to him. Finally, he also wanted to thank his parents for letting him out. Well, if he put his parents last, no one would say anything. By the way, when he saw the Manor Lord one day, should he mention to her to find a job for his parents? The more he knew, the more he didn't know. Zhang Xiaohua was now in this state. As he Tianshu brought those books to read, Zhang Xiaohua felt more and more that he knew too little. In fact, he had forgotten his main purpose. He had forgotten to find the reason why those seeds didn't germinate. He actually agreed with the pharmacy hall master's words. It was impossible to solve the problem that he Tianshu and the others encountered by simply reading a few books. In fact, if it could be solved by just reading books, then the pharmacy hall elder would have done it long ago. However, Zhang Xiaohua was already infatuated with this magical world of medicinal herbs. In the afternoon, Zhang Xiaohua returned to the house after practicing the fist technique. As usual, he picked up more books and prepared more. Only then did he remember that he had finished reading all the books last night. Zhang Xiaohua flipped through the books and felt very bored. Zhang Xiaohua had a bad habit of reading books. He didn't like to read a book a second time after reading it. Although he Tianshu brought over a lot of books, it couldn't stop Zhang Xiaohua from reading them day and night. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua remembered that when he Tianshu brought the books over, he said that if he finished reading all these books, he could go to the manor lord to borrow more. He could also find Qiu Tong. Thinking that he hadn't seen elder sister Qiu Tong for a long time, he wanted to take this opportunity to see her. After making up his mind, Zhang Xiaohua carried the books and went to look for He Tianshu. The door to He Tianshu's house was tightly shut. Zhang Xiaohua shouted outside for a long time, but no one answered. He must have gone out. This made Zhang Xiaohua worried. He had never entered the inner manor. He didn't know where elder sister Qiu Tong was, let alone the manor lord. Just as he was about to return to his house, Zhang Xiaohua remembered that he had looked for Elder Yu last time. Elder Yu definitely knew about it. He carried the books and entered through the small round door, walking towards the inner courtyard. After passing through a few courtyards, he arrived at Elder Yu's residence. Unfortunately, Elder Yu wasn't there either. Zhang Xiaohua felt discouraged. What day was it today? He didn't look at the almanac. Everything was going wrong. However, since he had already entered, he might as well continue to look around. If he saw one or two people, he could ask. He was also a member of the Misty Mountain Villa, so he wasn't afraid of being misunderstood. However, he forgot that the people in green clothes and hats and the few people from the medicine hall rarely entered the inner courtyard. That was where the girls lived. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was about to barge in, he suddenly heard someone scream, "Where did this child come from? Why are you here?" Zhang Xiaohua froze and couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Could they be talking about him? When he turned to look, there was indeed a girl standing under the shed in the small courtyard. She had washed clothes and was about to dry them. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly bowed and said, "I'm Captain He Tianshu's subordinate from the medicine fields outside. I want to come in to look for elder sister Qiu Tong." When the girl heard this, she looked puzzled. She put down the clothes and walked over. She looked Zhang Xiaohua up and down and said, "Captain He's subordinate? Why haven't I heard of you before? You're so young. How did you come out of the medicine hall?" Zhang Xiaohua naturally knew that she had misunderstood him as someone from the Misty School. It wasn't easy for him to explain, so he said, "I just came here not long ago. I'm not from the medicine hall, so elder sister probably doesn't know me. You just have to look for elder sister Qiu Tong and you'll naturally know." The girl felt that it made sense and said, "Since you're new here, you might not know the rules of the villa. You can't trespass into the inner courtyard without orders. Seeing that you're still young, Captain He must have been careless. You mustn't do this again. If the villa head finds out, you'll be caned." Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. He stuck out his tongue and said, "It's that serious. I really didn't know." However, he cursed inwardly, "Seriously, Captain He. Why didn't he tell me in detail and made me look for the villa head myself? The feeling of being caned on the butt is probably not good. Why didn't Tian Zhongxi say anything? How strange." Actually, this was also a misunderstanding. Tian Zhongxi and He Tianshu knew that he was someone brought in by Qiu Tong and thought that Qiu Tong had already explained the rules of the villa to him. Qiu Tong also saw him as her younger brother and naturally felt that there was nothing to hide. Moreover, after bringing Zhang Xiaohua in, they originally wanted to give her some instructions. However, they were stopped by the villa head's words of, "Work on your own," and had long forgotten about it. What was even more amazing was that Zhang Xiaohua had been recuperating in the escort agency for several months. In everyone's eyes, he was already an old person. In fact, he was still very fresh. However, he was indeed young and the girl didn't mind. She said, "Don't go in any further. I'll help you look for Qiu Tong." Then, she quickly walked in. Zhang Xiaohua could only wait there and look curiously at the small courtyard. This courtyard was slightly smaller than the one Zhang Xiaohua and the others were staying in. However, it was unusually clean and there were even some flowers and plants planted in the corners. It was easy for Zhang Xiaohua to think of his sister-in-law. Didn't Lu Qian like to plant flowers and plants in the courtyard? When he saw the clothes that the girl was about to dry, he lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he walked forward and placed the books he was carrying on the stone table. He washed his hands with the clean water in the basin and helped to dry the clothes in the basin one by one. Zhang Xiaohua used to help his mother do these things when he was at home. Naturally, he was familiar with the process and finished it in a short while. Moreover, when he was drying the clothes, he couldn't help but think about his family. Then, Zhang Xiaohua hugged the books and waited at the door. He felt very strange. Although he often missed home, it wasn't as frequent when he was in the medicinal field. He had only entered the inner courtyard for a short while, but if he wasn't missing his parents, then he was missing his sister-in-law. What was going on? Just as he was thinking, Zhang Xiaohua felt someone walking over from afar. Although he didn't hear the footsteps, Zhang Xiaohua could clearly feel it. As expected, the girl soon led Qiu Tong over. Qiu Tong saw Zhang Xiaohua from afar and said happily, "It really is you, Zhang Xiaohua." Qiu Ju said that a child was looking for you, but she couldn't say the name. "I guessed it was you." Seeing Qiu Ju's flushed face, Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. This girl was really careless. She didn't even ask for his name before running in. He could only say, "Big sister Qiu Ju ran too fast. I forgot to tell her." Qiu Tong smiled and said, "Xiaohua is a sensible child. She knows how to cover for others." However, everyone in the village knows about Qiu Ju's carelessness. "Alright, come in with me. Why did you suddenly come to find me today?" After speaking, she led Zhang Xiaohua inside. As Qiu Ju watched the two of them walk away, the blush on her face faded away. She secretly scolded herself for being careless. However, when she lifted her leg to continue with her work, she saw the clothes that were being hung out to dry. Her face turned even redder. This little brat was rather diligent and knew how to help others. However, how could a girl's clothes be hung out to dry by a man? The sudden change was that of a teenage boy. Qiu Ju stood in the courtyard. She didn't know if she should take down some of the clothes and wash them again. Endless confusion. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiaohua, who was walking into the inner courtyard, didn't know that her good deed had turned into a bad one. She happily told Qiu Tong the reason for her visit. When Qiu Tong heard that Zhang Xiaohua was reading a book about medicinal herbs, she was very happy. She couldn't help but rub Zhang Xiaohua's head like a little brother. She smiled and said, "Xiaohua, you're really amazing. When you first arrived, you didn't even know how to read. Now, you can actually read. If you can really help the village heads solve the problem of the seeds, that would be great." Zhang Xiaohua said seriously, "Big sister Qiu Tong, I can read thanks to that young Master Li you met last time." "Oh, right, he came to our village with my second brother last time. He even said that he wanted to meet you." Qiu Tong was stunned. She immediately understood and said with a smile, "Did young Master Li tell you to say that?" Zhang Xiaohua quickly explained, I wanted to tell you that, but young Masterly didn't let me. He just told me to mention him casually. Why don't you ask him the next time he comes? Chiu Tong smiled and said, we'll talk about it later. Right now, it's better to help the village head solve the problem. Zhang Xiaohua quickly said, young Masterly also gave me a few books like this at the beginning. However, seeing that Chiu Tong didn't seem to want to talk about this, she quickly added, however, I think that just reading these books and only studying the theory isn't enough. It's best to combine it with practice. This theory comes from practice, but it's better than practice. Experts record their practice into books for us to study. After we've finished learning, we still have to return to practice. Only then can we truly test the theory and turn it into our own knowledge. This is true knowledge from practice. When Chiu Tong heard this, she couldn't help but stop and say, who told you this? When Zhang Xiaohua saw that Chiu Tong had stopped, she also stopped and said, I learned all of this from reading these books. Am I wrong? Chiu Tong smiled and said, you're not wrong. It seems that the village head often says these things. I thought that someone else told you. Alright, let's go. The village head and the others seem to have something to do in the hall. I'll help you find the books. Please bookmark it, thank you. Chapter 118. However, Chiu Tong changed her mind after walking a short distance with Zhang Xiaohua. Yan had not told Chiu Tong what books she was going to give to Zhang Xiaohua. Moreover, it was inappropriate to bring someone into the manor master's study without the manor master's permission. Therefore, Chiu Tong brought Zhang Xiaohua to the main hall. As soon as they got close to the main hall, Zhang Xiaohua heard two people talking inside. One of them had a very pleasant voice, like an oriole flying out of a valley. One would never get tired of listening to it for a long time. The other person's enunciation was smooth and unhurried, but it did not have that kind of charm. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but think that the person with the pleasant voice was the manor master, Yan. In fact, Zhang Xiaohua had already started guessing Yan's appearance and voice when she came to the inner courtyard. She had been at Huanqi Manor for several months, and Yan had treated her very well. However, she had never seen her before. This time, she was here not only to return the books, but also to thank Yan in person for taking care of her. Chiu Tong asked Zhang Xiaohua to wait outside the room while she went in to report. After Chiu Tong entered the main hall, the two people inside stopped talking. Zhang Xiaohua heard Chiu Tong say from inside, Manor Master, Zhang Xiaohua from the herb field is here to return your books. He wants to borrow some more. What books do you want to borrow from him? At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua's ears perked up. She wanted to know who the voice was. Unfortunately, to her disappointment, the gentle voice said, He's finished reading so quickly. Could it be that this fellow was just randomly flipping through the books? Let him in. I'll ask him. If he really reads them and understands them, it won't be too late to borrow them then. It turned out that the extremely pleasant voice was not Yan's voice. Chiu Tong came out and gestured for Zhang Xiaohua to enter the room. When Zhang Xiaohua entered the room carefully, she saw a dignified and beautiful woman in her 20s sitting at the front of the hall. Her temperament was similar to Lu Qian's, and her skin was fair and smooth. If it weren't for the fact that the woman in front of her had phoenix eyes and Lu Qian's almond-shaped eyes, Zhang Xiaohua would have called her sister-in-law. On the other side of the hall sat a middle-aged woman with ordinary features. Her skin was dark and coarse, and although her clothes were bright, they couldn't hide her bucket-like waist. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. Could it be that the voice that had been reverberating for 3 days had come from this woman? At this moment, Yan spoke, Are you Zhang Xiaohua? Zhang Xiaohua quickly retracted her gaze and bowed deeply. Yes, Sister Manor Head, I am Zhang Xiaohua. Yan was a little stunned and almost laughed out loud. Sister? Ha, it's been a long time since someone called me sister. Zhang Xiaohua, your little mouth is really sweet. Zhang Xiaohua didn't think much of it and couldn't help but scratch her head. Is there a problem? Sister Manor Head. Oh Yan didn't get angry and only asked, "Why did you suddenly think of calling me sister?" Zhang Xiaohua said curiously, "Manor Head is older than me, so I have to call you sister. Moreover, Manor Head looks very similar to my sister-in-law. Just now, I almost called her sister-in-law." "That's right, my sister-in-law's name is Lu Qian. Before she married my big brother, I called her sister Lu. So, I feel that Manor Head is very close to me, so of course I should call you sister." The dark and coarse woman next to her spoke. Her clear voice rang in Zhang Xiaohua's ears. "Ha, this Xiaohua is really interesting. It's been a long time since I've seen such a simple child." Zhang Xiaohua looked at the woman and couldn't help but say, "Sister's voice is really nice." Oh Yen smiled and said, "Just call her Sister Qin. If you call her Sister Qin a few more times, she'll talk to you more and let you listen more." The woman turned out to be Aunt Qin from the Misty School's Ming Chui Hall. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he obediently said to the woman, "Hello, Sister Qin." Aunt Qin couldn't help but be stunned. She smiled and said, "Everyone calls me Aunt Qin, but you actually called me sister. That's fine, it sounds very comfortable. If you need sister's help in the future, don't hesitate to ask." Oh Yen smiled even more and said, "Zhang Xiaohua, why aren't you thanking Sister Qin? She doesn't open her mouth easily." Zhang Xiaohua was confused. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Sister Qin." Actually, he didn't think much of it in his heart. There was no such thing as a free lunch. It was his first time meeting her, so she definitely wouldn't help him just because of a title. He also didn't know what Oh Yen meant. She was probably joking. Everyone teased and said a few more words. Only then did Oh Yen ask Zhang Xiaohua, "Zhang Xiaohua, have you read these books? Do you understand them?" Zhang Xiaohua honestly said, "I've read them, Manor Head Sister." This time, Oh Yen frowned and said, "Big Sister Manor Lord sounds awkward. You can call me Big Sister Oh or Big Sister Yen." Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "I understand, Sister Oh." However, Oh Yen didn't quite believe Zhang Xiaohua's words and said, "Zhang Xiaohua, the most taboo thing when reading books is not to ask for a thorough understanding. You shouldn't bite off more than you can chew. Last time, I heard from He Tianshu that you've already read a lot of books. This time, you took so many books and finished reading them so quickly. Can you remember and understand them?" Zhang Xiaohua was a little anxious and said, "Really, Sister Oh, I understand them all. But because I understood these books, I realized that there are too many things I don't understand." Oh Yen heard him say this and her expression relaxed and said, "If that's the case, I'll ask you a few questions." After saying this, Oh Yen flipped through the books and picked a few questions for Zhang Xiaohua to answer. In Zhang Xiaohua's eyes, these questions weren't questions at all. They were written clearly in the books, so he answered them fluently without thinking. When Oh Yen saw that Zhang Xiaohua answered quickly, she was very happy and picked a few questions that weren't in the books for him to answer. This time, Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and answered the questions that he thought were appropriate based on the knowledge he had read. Oh Yen was even more happy when she heard this. After pointing out the inconsistencies in Zhang Xiaohua's answers, she said, "Zhang Xiaohua, I didn't expect you to be so proficient in these books. Very good. Wait here, I'll bring out more books for you to read. If there's anything you don't understand, come and ask me." After saying this, she excused herself from Aunt Qin and left with Chiu Tong with a face full of smiles. Only Aunt Qin and Zhang Xiaohua were left in the main hall. When Aunt Qin saw Zhang Xiaohua standing there obediently with his head lowered, she started chatting with him and asked about Zhang Xiaohua's recent situation. Zhang Xiaohua didn't hide anything from this good-natured older sister. He told her about how he came to Pingyang City, how he came to Huanxi Mountain Villa, and how he got injured. He only left out the part about the Fist of the North Star and the sword technique. When Aunt Qin heard about Zhang Xiaohua's encounter, she couldn't help but sigh. She thought about her own childhood and couldn't help but feel closer to Zhang Xiaohua. Just as they were talking, Oh Yen returned. Behind her, Chiu Tong actually carried a white cloth bag that looked very heavy. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly ran over to take it. It was heavy in his hands too. He guessed that there were many books inside. Yan sat down and said, Zhang Xiaohua, these are the books I picked out according to your situation. Read them well. Just now, I heard from Chiu Tong that you actually know how to combine theory with practice. That's really not bad. You have to continue on this path. Go as far as you can. It will be beneficial for both you and the villa. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Okay, Sister O. I will work hard to read and practice. I hope I can help Sister O solve the problem of the seeds. At the mention of the seeds, Yan couldn't hide the frown on her face. She said, Your hopes are good. However, if I could find the reason just by reading these books, I would have found it long ago. Zhang Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. It seemed like she had made up her mind at the wrong time. She said, as the saying goes, 3 cobblers are better than zhuge liang. If we all think of a solution together, there might be hope. Yan smiled and said, What you said makes sense, but many things can't be solved with more people. We still need senior people to deal with it. Then, Yan pondered for a moment and said, Zhang Xiaohua, read these books first. After a while, I will take you to see a real expert. You can see how they treat herbs. Hearing this, Chiu Tong's expression changed. She said, Young miss, you've decided to go alone? Aunt Qin also said, Yan, you have to think carefully. The journey is long, thousands of miles. Can your body handle it? Yan smiled and said, Big Sister Qin, you don't have to worry about me. Although the journey is a little long, didn't Chiu Tong go there last time? My body isn't any weaker than Chiu Tong's. Why can't I go? Chiu Tong begged, Young miss, let me go again. You shoulder the fate of the villa. It's better for you to stay in the villa and take care of the situation. Let us do the running. Yan smiled bitterly and said, A year has passed and there is still no movement from these seeds. This is a huge problem that concerns the strength of the Misty School. That day, I made a promise in front of Big Brother. If I can't solve it, won't I become a sinner in the sect? Aunt Qin also advised, These seeds have been lost for a long time. The specific method of planting them may have been lost long ago. Although you made a promise in front of the sect leader that day, most of them have been planted. Why care about this little bit? Yan smiled bitterly and said, This little bit is the most important thing. Last time, Chiu Tong went, they closed the door and refused to see us. They must think that we don't care enough. If I don't go, won't this path be cut off? Seeing that they couldn't persuade Yan, Aunt Qin and Chiu Tong didn't say anything else. Only Zhang Xiaohua listened to the 3 of them as if she was listening to a book from heaven. She didn't know what they were talking about. It seemed that when she was injured, Chiu Tong said that she went to the south and didn't come to see her. From what she heard, she went to ask someone to solve the problem of the seeds. However, that person felt that Chiu Tong's identity wasn't right and refused to see her. Chiu Tong returned empty-handed. Now, Yan wanted to go personally. From what she heard, she wanted to bring her along. The other 2 felt that Yan's identity was noble and were afraid that something would happen, so they stopped her. Zhang Xiaohua understood. Seeing that the 3 of them weren't interested, she quickly thanked Yan for borrowing the book and was about to leave. Yan smiled and said a few more words of encouragement before letting Chiu Tong take her away. Chiu Tong wasn't in a good mood. She brought Zhang Xiaohua to Qiuju's courtyard with a dark expression and said, Zhang Xiaohua, next time if you want to find me or the manor head, don't rush in rashly. Although you're young, you still have to abide by the manor's rules. If you see Qiuju or anyone else here, let them come in to find me, alright? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I know, Big Sister Chiu Tong. Don't be unhappy. I'm sure there'll be a solution. Chiu Tong forced a smile and said, I know. Xiaohua, you should work hard too. I hope you can help. Qiu Tong watched as Zhang Xiaohua walked away with a bag of books. Only then did she turn and walk away quickly. Zhang Xiaohua walked back with a large bag of books in her left hand. Luckily, Zhang Xiaohua had the strength of 250 kilograms in one arm. That was why she seemed so light. If it were anyone else, it would be difficult. She didn't know how Qiu Tong had carried the books from the study to the living room. When Zhang Xiaohua returned to the room, she threw the bag on the Kong bed and drank some water. When she opened it, her eyes widened involuntarily. My goodness, there really are a lot of books. There are at least a few dozen books. No wonder it's so heavy. However, Zhang Xiaohua was immediately overjoyed. With so many books, she would have something to rely on for the long night. At night, when Zhang Xiaohua finished practicing martial arts and casually opened a book, she suddenly realized that it was different from the previous books. First of all, the previous books were more basic, but these new books were obviously more profound. It was just right for Zhang Xiaohua's current level. Just a casual glance was enough to tickle Zhang Xiaohua's heart. She couldn't bear to let go of them. Secondly, the blank spaces of the previous books were as clean as before. However, these new books had more or less fine writing in the blank spaces of every page. There were only a few words in a few places, but there were many densely packed words that filled the entire page. When Zhang Xiaohua squinted her eyes to take a closer look, she realized that these words were written about the insights and experiences of reading this page. This was the first time that Zhang Xiaohua had encountered such a way of reading. Her eyes lit up and she began to read carefully. The more Zhang Xiaohua read, the more shocked she was, and the more she admired the person who wrote this. The notes in the blank spaces not only highlighted the main points of the page, but also quoted from classics, and wrote a lot of things by analogy. It was enough to show that the reader's knowledge was profound. As she read, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. She put down the book in her hand, picked up another book from the Kong, and opened it. Sure enough, that book was also densely packed with notes. Then, Zhang Xiaohua casually picked up a few more books, and they were all the same. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly realized that such beautiful handwriting belonged to none other than the Manor Lord, O Yan. Looking at such a large pile of books, Zhang Xiaohua was actually able to read them in such detail. Zhang Xiaohua felt admiration from the bottom of her heart. Also, she was filled with gratitude. This sister Manor Lord really treated her as an outsider and generously lent her the books that she usually read. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua really put Sister O on the same level as her sister-in-law. With enough books to read, Zhang Xiaohua's life became rich. She worked in the herbal field, practiced martial arts in the forest, and read books under the light. With these three activities, Zhang Xiaohua was not lonely at all. However, in her free time, Zhang Xiaohua was also looking forward to a long journey. Previously, Sister Qiu Tong went on a long journey for a few months. She said that she was going to the south, and she really wanted to go out and take a look. The furthest she had ever been to in her life was Pingyang City, and it was only a few days' journey. From the books, the climate and living habits of the south were very different from Pingyang City. Moreover, many of the medicinal herbs were different from Pingyang City as well. If she could go and take a look personally, it would definitely be better than just reading books. Scholars often said that reading 10,000 books was equivalent to traveling 10,000 miles. Even Zhang Xiaohua now had this kind of pursuit. Scrolls were really good things to cultivate people's minds. However, the long journey did not come quickly because of Zhang Xiaohua's longing. After a few days, there was no news from anyone. Gradually, Zhang Xiaohua stopped thinking about it. One day, Zhang Xiaohua was working in the fields as usual when she saw He Tianshu bringing a few people over. The two people in front were old men with white hair and beards. Behind them were a few slightly younger people. Some of them looked gentle, while others looked strong and powerful. However, their attitude was the same as He Tianshu's. They were all very respectful to the two people. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. She had never seen team leader He like this before. These two people must be the higher-ups of the pharmacy hall. Anyway, she was not from the Misty School and did not need to be so respectful to them. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua lowered her body and carefully moved the soil and weeded the grass. She carefully looked at each herb and observed their condition. Unfortunately, things did not go as she wished. He Tianshu saw her from afar and did not intend to let her go. He was leading the group of people over. When they got closer, He Tianshu called out, "Zhang Xiaohua, come over here for a while." Zhang Xiaohua looked up helplessly. She picked up the hoe and walked over. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua approaching, He Tianshu said to her, "Zhang Xiaohua, quickly come and greet Hall Master Bai and Elder He from the pharmacy hall." Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly bowed deeply and said, "Greetings, Hall Master Bai, Elder He." He Tianshu smiled obsequiously and said to the purple-faced old man, "Hall Master Bai, this is Zhang Xiaohua that I mentioned to you before. She is very practical and capable. She is also extremely smart and has already read many books about medicinal herbs." The two people did not return the greeting. Only Hall Master Bai waved his hand slightly. Elder He nodded in agreement and did not say anything. He Tianshu still said somewhat tactfully, "Hall Master Bai, you see, Zhang Xiaohua is very eager to learn. There are many books in our pharmacy. Do you think you can lend one or two to her to broaden her horizons? After all, she also works in the medicine field. It is always good to learn more." Before Hall Master Bai could say anything, a middle-aged man next to him spoke up, "He Tianshu, I think you have stayed in Huanxi Mountain Villa for too long and have long forgotten the rules of our Misty School. How can the books in this pharmacy be open to outsiders?" He Tianshu said with a wry smile, "I know this rule, Senior Brother Chang. But isn't this Zhang Xiaohua also a member of Huanxi Mountain Villa? She is not an outsider. Everyone, do you want to vote for the author? Please collect, thank you." Chapter 119. Senior Brother Chang said, "Are the people from Huanxi Mountain Villa part of the Misty School?" He Tianshu, who told you this? He Tianshu was stunned by the rebuttal. This question really hit the nail on the head and He Tianshu couldn't answer. Another younger person said, "Senior Brother He, you don't need to waste your time. Our Misty School is very strict when it comes to accepting disciples. Our aptitude is the first choice. This junior brother isn't talented. Although my aptitude isn't the best among the younger generation, it's still above average. I can't be worse than you, Zhang Xiaohua. I've read the medicine books in our hall since I was young, but I couldn't find a solution from these books. Does Senior Brother He really think he can bring you a miracle?" Then, Senior Brother Chang opened his mouth again and said, "This seed didn't germinate, but we didn't put all the blame on you. At worst, you can stay in Huanxi Mountain Villa next year." After he finished speaking, he chuckled. He Tianshu's face turned purple from the two's words. Zhang Xiaohua stood beside He Tianshu and carefully tugged on his clothes. She whispered, "You don't have to help me borrow books, Captain He. The villa master has already given me some books." When Hall Master Bai heard this, his eyes flashed and then disappeared. After all, in the Misty School's medicine hall, there were many young elites who were better than Zhang Xiaohua. Any one of them was trained from a young age. When it came to theoretical knowledge, they were 100 times better than Zhang Xiaohua. Although he was a little surprised by Ou Yan's attitude towards Zhang Xiaohua, he didn't care too much. Hall Master Bai waved his hand and said, "Don't quarrel. He Tianshu's intentions are good, but he's too anxious for success. We still have to abide by the sect's rules. It's better not to lend these books. Let's go, let's take a look at those medicine fields." After he finished speaking, he walked towards the seemingly barren medicinal field at the side. Elder He followed closely behind, as if he couldn't hear their quarrel at all. Senior Apprentice Brother Chang and the other Junior Apprentice Brother glanced at He Tianshu proudly and followed him. They didn't even bother to look at Zhang Xiaohua. He Tianshu patted Zhang Xiaohua apologetically and followed closely behind. Zhang Xiaohua didn't care too much. He had seen this kind of look many times and had long been used to it. He had his own path, so why should he care about other people's looks? After that, Zhang Xiaohua worked nearby and watched from afar. Everyone seemed to be arguing very fiercely, but they couldn't convince each other. They only dispersed when the sky turned dark. When it was time to eat, Zhang Xiaohua finally saw He Tianshu. He Tianshu's face was very gloomy. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Flattery was also a skill. The next few days were quite ordinary, and there was nothing to talk about. That night, Zhang Xiaohua was reading his book as usual. He Tianshu walked in with a tired face and said, "Zhang Xiaohua, hurry and pack your things. You're going out with me tomorrow." Zhang Xiaohua wasn't surprised and said, "Okay, Captain He. Why are you in such a hurry? Why didn't you tell me during the day?" He Tianshu smiled bitterly and said, "I also just got the news. How could I tell you earlier?" After he finished speaking, he turned and prepared to leave. However, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked back in surprise. Why didn't you ask where we were going? You seemed to know beforehand that we were going out." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I already gave a heads up when I went to borrow books from the village head. I thought we would leave early, but it dragged on for so long that I thought we weren't going." He Tianshu smiled and said, "I see. However, as you said, it won't be easy to go out this time. I heard that our boss didn't agree, but he couldn't win against the village head. After a few arguments, he finally let us go." Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, "Boss? Who?" He Tianshu said, "It's the leader of our Misty School. Ha, he's our village head's biological brother." Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. No wonder Huanxi Manor was so close to the Misty School. It should be the case since they were related by blood. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's expression, He Tianshu said, "There have always been a lot of bloodshed in the pugilistic world." The leader of the Misty School felt sorry for his sister and didn't want her to go far away. Originally, he sent Hall Master Bai from our pharmacy to go, but unfortunately, Hall Master Bai had some grudges with the person the village head was visiting. So, it wasn't only our hall master, but also the people from the pharmacy hall. Since the medicinal herbs were planted in Huanxi Manor, the village head felt that he didn't fulfill his duty and insisted on going. "Also, I want to tell you something." As he spoke, He Tianshu's expression became mysterious. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and said, "It's not a secret, is it?" "Captain He, if it is, then don't tell me. I'm worried about my life." He Tianshu laughed and scolded, "What kind of life-threatening news do you think I have? I want to know, but I don't have any channels or sources." Then, he said with a look of longing, "The village head is very knowledgeable and has deep attainments in many aspects. Her research on medicinal herbs alone is not inferior to our hall master Bai. This is also one of the reasons why she wants to go to the south." Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "What kind of secret is this? I already knew." He Tianshu said in disbelief, "How do you know this? The people in the manor know very little." Zhang Xiaohua picked up the book she was reading from the Kong and handed it to He Tianshu, saying, "You'll know after you read it." He Tianshu opened it and couldn't help but be stunned. He shook his head as he read and muttered, "Amazing, amazing, very pertinent." Then, he said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Brother Xiaohua, aren't we good brothers?" Looking at He Tianshu's warm smile, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly had goosebumps all over his body. A bad feeling rose from the bottom of his heart and he probed, "Captain He, you're my teacher, how would I dare to call you my brother? Is there something you need?" He Tianshu laughed, "Don't talk about master. From today onwards, you're my little brother. If there's anything you need, just tell me. Big brother will definitely help you." Hee hee. Zhang Xiaohua was even more certain that He Tianshu was a weasel paying a visit to the chicken. He said carefully, "Then, Big Brother He, do you need anything?" He Tianshu said embarrassedly, Little brother, can you lend me these books to read?" Then, he pointed at the large pile of books on the table in embarrassment. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly realized. He rolled his eyes and said, there shouldn't be any problem. But, it's not good to not have the village head's approval. He Tianshu was a little disappointed. Zhang Xiaohua said, aren't we going to the south together tomorrow? I'll bring these books with me, so we'll definitely be together. You can read them together. When there's a chance on the road, I'll ask the village head. We're both eager to learn, so I'm sure the village head will agree. He Tianshu was overjoyed when he heard this. Only then did he reluctantly return the books in his hands to Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua saw He Tianshu's appearance and couldn't help but feel sad. He casually spread out the white paper on the table and skillfully picked up a pen with his left hand and wrote a few words on the paper. He Tianshu saw it and couldn't help but clap his hands and say, not bad, that's what a scholar of my generation should do. The sun shone through the window, and the words on the paper were shining brightly. It said, no comments, no reading. In fact, He Tianshu might have read a few books that Yan lent to Zhang Xiaohua. But in He Tianshu's eyes, the important thing wasn't these books, but Yan's notes on the books. This was Yan's learning method. If he could learn Yan's learning method from these books, he would naturally be able to learn more things. It would be of great help to his development in the pharmacy hall. However, how did Zhang Xiaohua know these? She despised He Tianshu from the bottom of her heart. A dignified person from the pharmacy hall of the Misty School didn't even read these books, but he actually came to compete with her. After He Tianshu left, Zhang Xiaohua simply packed up her belongings. She took out the package that she took from the inner courtyard that day and packed all the books on the table. She heard that she would be gone for a few months. She estimated that she would finish reading these books when she came back. Looking at the big package on the table and the small bag that contained her belongings, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile. The night gradually deepened. Zhang Xiaohua was lying on the kong. She was still thinking about He Tianshu's instructions before he went out. Don't tell anyone about going out tomorrow. I will call you tomorrow morning, and we will leave quietly. Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. Isn't it just going out? Why does he have to keep it a secret? It's not to avoid debts. Moreover, I don't have two close friends in the villa. Who can I tell? However, Zhang Xiaohua, who was on the kong bed, did not know that in the deep night, a figure had quietly come out of the manor's inner courtyard. She came to the edge of a forest and carefully looked around. She placed a small piece of paper in a certain spot on a tree and then quietly left. Judging from the figure, it seemed to be a woman. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua woke up very early. After she finished practicing her fist and sword techniques, she returned to the house to wait for He Tianshu. Not long after Zhang Xiaohua returned to the house, a small servant in green clothes and a small hat quietly came to the forest. It was the tree where the woman hid the note last night. He took the note from the tree and carefully looked at it. He slightly frowned and put it into his clothes. He also looked around before carefully leaving. Zhang Xiaohua returned to the house. Not long after, He Tianshu came to call Zhang Xiaohua with a package on his back. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua carrying a small bag in one hand and a large package in the other, he couldn't help but laugh. He said, "Why are you carrying so many things? What are they?" Zhang Xiaohua said innocently, "Don't you want to read books? Aren't these books for you?" He Tianshu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "You don't have to bring so many books. How many books can I read?" "But, can I read?" Zhang Xiaohua said as she blinked. He Tianshu said helplessly, "All right, let's go." He said that he wanted to help Zhang Xiaohua carry the large package. How could Zhang Xiaohua let him carry it? Naturally, she refused. He Tianshu said, "If other people see a child like you carrying two packages and following me, won't they criticize me? Although they are all people I know, I can't let them laugh at me." Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and gave the small package in her right hand to He Tianshu. She said, "It's better to help me carry this. No one will gossip." He Tianshu helplessly took it and urged Zhang Xiaohua to quickly leave the house. The two of them took the packages and went out the door. Then, they followed the small path and walked towards the forest. Not long after, they arrived at the side of another courtyard. When they entered the courtyard, it was a very large courtyard. Right in the middle, there were 4 carriages parked. There were many people in the courtyard who were busy working. However, when Zhang Xiaohua walked into the courtyard, the first thing she saw was a large man standing in front of the first carriage. That large man was taller than the average person by a head. His body was huge and his bare arms revealed strong muscles. He stood there silently like an iron tower. The figures in the courtyard were vague, but he was like a pillar that attracted everyone's attention. Other than Zhang Xiaohua, everyone looked at him with admiration and reverence. Zhang Xiaohua also saw He Tianshu's expression. She carefully pulled on his sleeve and asked, "Who is this?" "Your boss." He Tianshu flung his sleeve and said in a small voice, "Zhang Xiaohua, don't talk nonsense. This is our Misty School's #1 strongman called Shirnyo. His outer martial arts are very strong. It's said that he has the strength of a few thousand pounds with one arm. He's many times stronger than you." "Oh, a few thousand pounds?" Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up. Although she wanted to approach him, she saw that the people around the carriages were far away from him. He Tianshu also didn't go over to greet him, so she didn't dare to approach him. At this time, Qiu Tong came out with some things. When she saw the big package in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, she couldn't help but feel angry and amused. She complained, "Xiaohua, you're not going to travel. Why are you carrying such a big package? Don't tell me it's the books I gave you last time. I remember that it's very heavy. Aren't you afraid that it'll crush the carriage?" Qiu Tong's voice wasn't low, so it attracted Shirnyo's attention. When he saw that Zhang Xiaohua was carrying a big package in her left hand, he couldn't help but be surprised. When Zhang Xiaohua heard Qiu Tong talking about her, she replied embarrassedly, "Didn't you say that you'll be gone for a few months? I want to use this time to study. I think I can finish reading all these books, so I brought them with me." Qiu Tong and Shirnyo were both surprised to hear that. Qiu Tong knew how many books she gave him last time. When she heard that he wanted to finish reading all of them in a few months, she couldn't help but be surprised. She thought to herself, even if he reads one book every 3 days, he might not be able to finish it. But if he has to read one book every 3 days, how can he completely understand it? When Shirnyo heard that the package was full of books, he knew how heavy the package was. He couldn't help but be surprised. This child was very young, but he could easily pick up such a heavy package with one hand. He wasn't simple at all. Perhaps he wasn't as good as Shirnyo when he was young, but there wasn't much difference. Whose disciple was this child? Qiu Tong continued, "All right, put your package in the last carriage. But you have to read carefully. There's no point in flipping through the books casually. Don't waste the manor master's good intentions." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Sister, don't worry. I know what I'm doing." After speaking, she followed He Tianshu to the last carriage. The carriage was very spacious. It was even more spacious than the ones Zhang Xiaohua had sat in before. There was actually a space similar to a bookcase. It was probably for storing things. Zhang Xiaohua opened the package and put some books on it. She put the package to one side. He Tianshu put his own package and Zhang Xiaohua's small package on the carriage and then got down. After Zhang Xiaohua tidied up a little and got down from the carriage, there were a lot fewer people in the courtyard. They were probably ready to stop. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua felt that someone was looking at her. When she turned her head, she saw that it was Shirnyo. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and smiled at him. Just as she was about to go over and talk to him, a group of people came out from the small door in the courtyard. At the front was the manor master of Huanxi Manor, O Yan. Behind O Yan was big sister Qin, who Zhang Xiaohua saw in the inner courtyard. Why did she look so special? It was because there were a few young women with good figures following behind her. They were all dressed in tight clothes and had swords at their waists. They looked valiant and formidable. Even though Zhang Xiaohua wasn't at the age of first awakening of love, she still wanted to take a few more glances at them. In such an atmosphere, how could Big Sister Qin not stand out? However, Big Sister Qin was calm. She followed Oh Yan down the steps. The few women behind her kept a distance from them. Their expressions were very respectful. Oh Yan walked in front of Shernyo and said with a smile, "Shernyo, you must have been here a long time ago." Shernyo said naively, "Manner Master, you're early." "Not too early. I've been here for an hour." Oh Yan continued, "Then I'll have to trouble you along the way." Shernyo said, "It's my duty." Big sect leader said that I must ensure Manor Master's safety. Otherwise, I won't be allowed to drink when I return. Oh Yan smiled faintly and looked around. She asked Chiu Tong, who was walking over, "Is everything ready?" Chiu Tong said in a low voice, "Yes, Mississippi. Everything is ready." Oh Yan nodded in satisfaction, "Then let's go. The journey is long. The sooner we leave, the sooner we can return." With that, she boarded the first carriage with Chiu Tong's help. After that, Big Sister Qin and Chiu Tong also boarded the first carriage. The remaining female disciples sat in the second carriage. Zhang Xiaohua, He Tianshu, and the rest of the people sat in the last two carriages. After everyone had boarded the carriages, Shernyo boarded the first carriage. He picked up his whip and drove the carriage out of the courtyard. The other coachmen followed him. Just like that, Zhang Xiaohua's journey to the south officially began. Not long after Oh Yan's carriage left the manor, a few servants in green clothes and hats asked for leave and left Huanxi Manor together. When they reached Pingyang City, they went their separate ways. One of them went to the provision store. He had gone to the forest to retrieve the note in the morning. Not long after, that servant came out with the things he bought and disappeared into the crowd. Just like that, news of Oh Yan's journey was secretly found out by people with ulterior motives. However, no one knew what they were up to. However, all this had nothing to do with Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua sat in the carriage curiously and looked at the scenery by the roadside. Although Lu Town was in the south of Pingyang City, it was slightly to the west. Oh Yan's destination this time was to the east. Hence, after leaving the manor, she did not head to Pingyang City. Instead, she took a shortcut and headed to the main road in the east. It was already late autumn and everything was withering. The crops in the fields had already been harvested and the empty fields could be seen far away. The terrain near Pingyang City was similar to that of Lu Town. It was mostly mountainous and there were still many wild fruits and weeds on the undulating hills. From time to time, one could see villagers carrying small baskets or herding a flock of sheep. They shrunk their necks as they walked back and forth on the hills. Naturally, Zhang Xiaohua felt sad for Gu Jingji. She thought of her hometown and her parents. It had been almost a year since she last saw them. How were they doing? No book reviews, no reading. Ha! Everyone, please do a survey on the author and vote. Please vote. Please bookmark it. Thank you.